Okay, now I can't say another word. Why, we are on mute, but after that I won't be able to talk. This-
Oh, boy. Can you see what I look like with Larry's? It just says DS. Is there another one?
Another background that you want?
No. It says DS. Is there another one?
Did you unmute him?
Another background that you want?
It says DS.
Shelley?
Hello, this is Steve here. Hey. Hello, everybody.
Okay, let's make sure all the counselors have they're unmuted. Can everybody hear?
Yeah.
Here. Let's make sure counselors have their unmuted. Can everybody hear? Raise your hand if everybody can hear, please. Okay, great. Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Is there any conflict of interest amongst any council members here tonight? Okay, seeing none, the adoption of published agenda, we do have an addition to it, and Rob will state what that is.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're just, if it's council's wish this evening, we're just looking to add correspondence received yesterday, April 5th, from the Essex Center BIA chairperson. We're looking to add that as agenda item 11.1.6.
So if there's no objections to that, so I need a mover for the published agenda, please. Councillor Verbeek and Councillor Guerin, all in favor?
By show of hands.
Show of hands, please. Carried, thank you.
Okay. Item 5 on the agenda, adoption of minutes. 5.1, that the minutes of the regular council meeting of March 16th, 2020 be adopted as circulated.
And I need a mover for that, please. Councillor Bjorkman and Deputy Mayor Malash, any questions? You have a question, Councillor Vandenhulen, or all in favor? All in favor? Show of hands, please. Carried, thank you.
5.2 on the agenda this evening, that the minutes of the special council meeting held February 13th, 2020 be adopted as circulated.
Have a mover, please. Councillor Bjorkman and Councillor Vanendel. Any questions? All in favor? Show of hands, please. It's carried. Thank you.
Item 7 on the agenda, Mr. Mayor, as unfinished business, is Community Services Report 2020-03. At the March 2nd, 2020 regular council meeting, this report entitled Rename Essex Community Center to Maydell Community Center was deferred for 1 month for the purposes of obtaining public input. Community Services Report 2020-03, as amended and dated April 6, is now amended to include for the results of the public feedback. Looking to receive the report and for council to approve the renaming, but I believe our Director of Community Services, Doug Sweet, is going to speak to this report.
Okay, Doug, are you there? If you'd like to speak on it, please. Doug? Oh, he's muted. Oh, you're all set, Doug. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to provide to council a quick summary of why we're looking at potential name change for the Essex Community Center. Currently, the town has 3 recreational facilities in Essex Center and all have similar names. The Essex Recreation Complex, the Essex Community Center, and the Essex Center Sports Complex. As the facility names are very similar, it's created confusion on what locations people have rented or registered a program at. To rectify this issue, administration has worked with this town's Heritage Committee to put forth a historical name significant with Essex Center, and Edward Charles Maydell was suggested. In 1908, Edward Charles Maydell purchased a struggling soft drink company on Talbot Street in Essex and renamed it Maydell's Beverages. In 1935, Maydell received the first Pepsi Cola franchise in all of Ontario and the second franchise in all of Canada. From this expansion, Mr. Maydell built a new shop at the corner of Talbot and Bryan Ave, the current location of Essex Appliance Store, and continued as a main distributor for Pepsi Cola. In 1989, the Maydell family sold the business, but the Pepsi factory, which today exists in Essex, is a direct result of Charles Maydell. To receive public feedback on the potential name change to the Maydell Community Center, the survey was issued on March 4th. All responses could be submitted online or on the town, also provide hard copies at all town recreation facilities. 3 questions were asked. Do you support the name change? Yes or no? If you answer no, do you have another suggested name? And any other relevant feedback on the name change? A total of 54 surveys were submitted, with 48 of the surveys, or 88%, in support of the name change to the Maydell Community Center. Administration feels Edward Charles Maydell is a worthy candidate for renaming the Essex Community Center to the Maydell Community Center and recommends the town proceed with the renaming. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Doug. Any questions from council at all on this? I think it's nice that we name it after the Maydell. I think it's a proper thing to do. No objections? All in favor? Oh,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we need a motion.
Yeah, we need a motion to accept. Need a motion and a seconder. Councillor Verbeek and Deputy Mayor Malash. Any further questions on it? All in favor, show of hands, please. It's carried. Thank you.
Item 8, reports from administration. 8.1 is the Chief Administrative Officer and Director's verbal reports concerning the COVID-19 town response and updates.
Chris, if you're ready, you can go ahead, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I've got quite a bit to go over with council tonight. Quite a bit happening, quite a bit's changing day to day, as you know. First item, I do want to talk about staffing. With respect to staffing, I sent an email out to council to kind of confirm where we're at with staffing and numbers. And I want to go over that with you guys again tonight, just so that you truly understand, where we're at. I know there's a lot of stuff in the paper to do with the city and maybe what you're hearing about other municipalities, but I do want to go through that with you and some of the reasons, for why we're at where we're at. So as of March 23rd, which was several weeks ago now, we did reduce our workforce in the recreation division by 89 program staff, 11 desk reception staff. We laid off 3 permanent part-time staff and 1 full-time aquatic staff. So 100 plus workers that were reduced in our workforce as of March 23rd. So several weeks ago. Also, on top of that, we've had 25% of our existing parks and facilities staff take a voluntary layoff. So we're reduced even more that way. The other thing that we've done here to create safe workplaces, as you know, at Town Hall, we're space restricted. So what we've been doing is repurposing other town facilities to create office space, safe office space. So we have ECC, where we've got 8 staff operating out of. We have the Essex Arena, where we have 2 staff operating, 3 staff potentially. We've got the Harrow Arena, where we have staff operating. We're looking at opening the McGregor facility to have staff operating out of there, as well as the pool area we have staff working out of. And that's not only to create the physical separation here, but what we're looking at is creating facility separation. So the concept is, if to have more ships floating in the water, if one ship goes down, we've got other ships still afloat. So we're taking, like Doug and I, for example, Doug's working at VCC, I'm working out of Town Hall. In the event either someone gets sick or we have to quarantine or do those things, we're creating those additional workspaces for everybody. What that's done, though, is increase the number of facilities we're operating out of. So although, we don't have rec programs at ECC or rec programs at the Ball Diamonds or the arenas, we're still operating staff out of there. So with the existing significant reduction in staff complement that we have, with our current staffing level, and with the anticipation of, what we're hearing, 10 to 30% of our workforce getting sick, there's a real concern there that we need to maintain the operations we have right now with the current reductions we have. As you got an email from Doug today, we still need to cut the grass. We still need to float the diamonds, not to the same level. We're not going every day. We're not going 7 days a week, but once a week, because Doug's lived through the strike at the City of Windsor. And when you let your fields and your ball diamonds go to a point, they become, the capital cost of investment to recover, there's a cost there. So it's minimal though. It's minimal and it's essential. So also keeping that grass cut is to ensure, the ticks, the mosquitoes, those types of things as well. So we still have to clean garbage in the parks. We still have to ensure our parks facilities are buttoned up, not being, the fencing and the tape is still up. The signage is in proper places. We're still cleaning garbage because people are still allowed to be in passive parks and open green spaces. So we've always been a very lean workforce. So we don't have that fat to cut. We've done that already. 100 plus people that aren't working is that fat to cut. That's where we're at for now. In the event this goes on, months, then we can reassess as we go. We're continually making sure that we're efficient, effective, still pushing the workout, still getting value, and making sure that things are maintained to that minimum standard. So in addition, like I said, the facilities that we have operating right now, we have staff coming in, cleaning them 2 to 3 times a day. So 9 facilities that we're operating still out of, we have to clean those 2 to 3 times a day. So Staffing wise, we're creating those safe environments, keeping people separated, both facility and physically, and still, staying the course, right? Still have building going on. We still have development going on, existing. So there's those, functions that we still have to maintain that way. So any questions on staffing?
Councillor Bondi, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to our CAO. I believe it's probably too early to tell, but do we see a cost savings with reduction in staffing, or do we just see it leveling out because we're running less programs? So because that's one of the questions that I'm getting, right? People in the community are going, you need to give us money back on our taxes because you're laying people off. So is that a valid point that we'll be looking into in the future, do you believe? Thank you.
Go ahead.
I think through your worship, definitely we're aware of all those things. We're aware that our arenas and our pools fund our budget, but we're also, I guess, where people need to be aware is we need to keep the other facilities running and working. So although those staff might not be, maintaining ice or maintaining pools, they're cleaning in the facilities that we have to do. So it's a different value now, but we're definitely on track of it, on top of it, and making sure that we're being fiscally responsible, to the taxpayers, and still, we still have to maintain things to a certain level, and we want to ensure that message is out there. So what I'm going to do as well, the blurb I just went through, I'm going to send to council, so you guys have that, so that you guys can use that and educate your residents, because the 541 workers the city laid off is identical, and they just did that Monday, right? Is similar to the 100+ that we laid off 2 weeks ago already. The fact the city operates, they're all unionized, so it's a little different that way. So, when you look in terms of size and capacity and ratio, we've already done what we needed to do, and then we're hoping to manage the storm with the staff we have right now.
Thank you, Chris. Is that okay, Councillor Bondi? Good. Councillor Guerin. Go ahead, Councillor Guerin.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening. Chris, can you just clarify, I was jotting down those notes, and I know you're going to send out to us, but were all the layoffs only in the Parks and Rec department? And in addition to that, you'd mentioned an additional 25% others took the voluntary layoff. Did I get that right?
Yeah. So the predominant was definitely parks and facilities. Yes. One was a part-time clerk at the fire hall. So there's one part-time clerk there. Additional 25% of the, I guess, the regular full-time, part-time staff at community services took voluntary leave.
Is that good, Councillor? Good. Any other councillors? So on the report, all in favor?
That's only one point, Your Worship.
Okay, go ahead.
I got lots more points here. So I need to find my plug because I'm going to run out of battery soon, but okay. Anyways, okay, so I'm going to have Doug take over now and just talk about a little more on Harbor's Parks and Facilities. I know I took a lot of his, or spoke to a lot of his points, but I want him to just readdress and reassess, I guess, where we're at with the
Doug, I guess you can go ahead, Doug.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chris hit most of it. One thing I just wanted to go back in terms of staffing. There has been a question about staff working 7 days a week in terms of parks and facilities. That is happening. We're not having extra staff working. We're just spreading them over 7 days, again, for safety, social distancing. We can only have one person in a truck. We only have so many pieces of equipment. So that's why we're spreading it over those 7 days. We go in terms of facilities, March 13th, all indoor recreation facilities closed. Soon after, we took the initiative, like a lot of surrounding municipalities, closed playgrounds, skate parks, tennis courts. April 1st, we did receive an order from the province to close all outdoor facilities, including harbors and marinas. With all those closures for outdoor facilities, our staff have been out fencing off, locking up facilities, and putting up proper signage. I think council's seen all the sign that is out now. The only thing that is open now in terms of outdoor facilities are trails and walkways. We keep saying as of now. So that is allowed to be, people can still be out using our walkways and trails. In terms of recreation and culture, hopefully most people saw we did a media release today in a new program through Recreation and Culture. Where to try and help our community, we're doing some online programming for all ages where they can do it yourself. We have a calendar that shows live times where they can go on and do the activity, be it a craft or fitness with, or there's things they can also download. That is at no cost to our residents, and we're bringing no extra staff to do that. The only other thing in community services that we have to consider coming up for May is our spring programs begin April 27th. We'll be looking at delaying or even canceling that session. The harbor was to open May 1st. It will remain closed until the provincial order is lifted. We'll be contacting everybody that had a flip for 2020 to notify them that. And all our staff are currently canceling all May events that are booked in our town parks. So in terms of community services, that's kind of where we are in terms of facilities outside of what Chris talked on staffing.
Thank you, Doug. Any questions, Councillor Bjorkman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Mr. Sweet. I think just clarification, because people were worried that they were wondering, are we paying people overtime that are working Saturday and Sunday? And I believe that was what they thought was happening. So is that the case, or are we just spreading out regular pay through the 7 days?
You, Mr. Mayor, no overtime is being issued at all. Full-time are getting their 40 hours, basically the Monday to Friday, and the part-time are being implemented within the other 7 days a week, no more than 24 hours a week. But no overtime for anyone.
Okay, good, Councillor. Councillor Verbeek. Councillor Verbeek. Go ahead.
Hey, I told you, I wanted to say to Doug and team and staff, kudos. I'm anxious to join with some of these online programs, and I think we should all try and share them because it looks like I saw Heather today had one go live. I was busy getting ready for the meeting, so I'm going to watch it after the meeting. So good on you, staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, through your worship, to our community services director as well. I want to say kudos to you and your team as well. It's awesome. I've been sharing it all day, and since we've received it, since it was announced, and I've had a lot of positive feedback already. Just everybody expressing their thanks, and great that the town of Essex would do that. A second point, with the reduction in staff and trying to keep the proper distances, we haven't had any problems with jobs as far as a lot of times you need to have a second person in close proximity in order to do certain jobs to cover us on safety issues. And I'm just wondering how we're handling that.
Okay, can you answer that, Doug?
Yeah, I was just seeing if Chris was still there. Nope. So yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, we're making sure if there's any in-person meetings, there's a pre-check before anybody can come into the facility or meet with any staff. That's been implemented. If that happens, then we make sure there is social distancing, whatever meeting space they're using, be it the large meeting room or if it's in one of our other facilities. Any work with staff, we've taken the steps to strategically separate. So example, we have a clerk here at Essex Community Center, Maydell Community Center, and we have one at Town Hall. So we've done that with all the department to try and avoid those type of situations as well. And the other thing, we're using a lot of Teams, Microsoft Teams, to meet, so we don't have to be in person. And that's been very successful as well.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, Chris lost his power, but he'll be back in here in a couple of seconds. Any other questions from council? Nobody else? I guess we can move into building department operations. Who's going to speak on that one? Lori?
Mr. Mayor,
Go
thank
ahead.
you, Mr. Mayor. I'm here. What I'd like to share with the team is that we are working very hard in the building department and would love to give you an update on how things are moving along. You know, every day does change, no different than any other division in anyone's personal lives. Things are changing every minute, even within the building division. So building and bylaw continues to operate as well, with some adjustments. So what does that mean? It means that where necessary, we're embracing new methods of practice and utilizing available technologies. So to give you some idea of what that means, although the doors may be closed to the public, we are accepting fee payments, deposit refunds are being conducted electronically over the phone, via mail, or if cash, by appointment with pre-screening. Hard copies of plans and applications are still being accepted if the electronic means is not possible for a developer or a builder. And that is hard copies are accepted via Dropbox. And that Dropbox, we have one location in Gesto at the building department, as well as one location at Town Hall. Soft copies, of course, are the preferred alternative, or the preferred option rather, and that can be done through email, web-based submissions, etc. Additional health and safety measures for staff conducting inspections and bylaw visits. These measures are in place to protect the staff that's going out there as much as possible. So that includes, similar to what Mr. Sweet was saying a minute ago about you know, the pre-screening. We're also not only doing pre-screening upon appointment, but we're also screening upon arrival. So we're doing that double duty to make sure that those folks are safe arriving on site. We're asking property owners and contractors to maintain an acceptable distance, but also where possible to relocate to another room or a different area of the site. We've got disposable gloves, hand sanitizer, disinfectant wipes, masks as necessary, etc. So at this time, our building and bylaw division is booking all inspection types and requests. As of Saturday, technically as of Friday, the announcement, we have new information. So what does that information mean? It means that there will be a delay to some inspections, or rather a postponement of some inspections related to residential development after April the 4th. So in fact, if there is an ongoing development, any residential development that has already been in the ground, foundation is in the ground, those inspections can continue, that construction can continue. Any applications from a residential perspective that are received after April 4th, so from today onwards or Saturday onwards, those applications can be received, plans can be reviewed, and according to the province, permits can be issued. However, inspections cannot take place. So we, the province has guided us and directed us to indicate that we don't want to slow things down. We don't want to come into this bottleneck scenario. We want to be able to continue doing business, but what we have to do is slow things down in terms of that residential inspections. So that's really where we're holding, you know, putting a hold on certain things. So residential inspections are on hold unless the foundation was in prior to April the 4th. What can I tell you? Unless it's other things to share with you, that, of course, the building, plumbing, fire protection inspections that are safety related, that are, you know, for life purposes, Those are mandatory or still ongoing. Any inspections and construction related to institutional healthcare still ongoing, as well as those apartment buildings still ongoing. Inspections related to industrial work still ongoing. So really there's just a slight change since Saturday. It's still not affecting us. When we look at our numbers, we are still averaging the same as if we were 3 weeks ago. So we are still strong. We're still out there. We're still operating. Our building and bylaw team is phenomenal. We have a great group, and the group is working in tandem with each other. Plan review in-house, inspections out of house. It's going strong. The one thing I do want to mention, and this is, I think it's inevitable. There may be a time where things may start to slow down. So we are on top of it. We're looking at our numbers, we're gathering the data, and once or if things start to slow down, I will ensure that the message is being relayed through senior administration to council, just to give you that heads up. Something else that's, Kevin Carter and I, as our CBO, we talk about, and as well, something that is on the top of our minds is what happens in those scenarios where folks may build projects, maybe it's an expansion to an existing dwelling without a permit, or what happens with those projects around town. So we just felt that last week. And luckily we have a very forward-thinking building division and bylaw division. So we deployed our team to drive every single street in the town of Essex. We divided it from the north to the south, and we took drives, and we ended up finding some infractions. So we issued some infractions last week, and we asked that those works cease to work, or rather stop work until proper permits are issued and or proper measures are in place. So we did come across that. There weren't that many. There were only 7 infractions last week. I think moving forward, actually, I know moving forward, our CBO is we're going to continue doing that, deploying our team once a week, just to make sure that we have our eyes on the municipality, to make sure that if we see something that's being built without a permit, that we're acting on it right away. That's it for me. Welcome to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Lori. Just to verify one thing before I open it up to council. Now, council's got to be aware, any new development, any new home, okay, will not start. Am I correct there? Like, let's go to the Pollard development. He's got two structures up. He will not be putting foundations in right now, and because we haven't got anybody to inspect it. Am I right there?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a really unfortunate scenario because our forecasts will be different. Something that we forecasted a month ago, starting hopefully this spring or this summer or even in the fall, may be affected. It's not to say that we're not going to review those plans, we will. And it's not even to say that we won't issue permits, we will, if of course, the proposals are in line with the building code. But the issue is that we, the municipality and other municipalities in Ontario, are not able to conduct inspections on any permits that are issued after April 4th.
Okay.
So there will be likely a delay in breaking the ground. And of course, those developers that will be required to abide by those laws, we will be indicating upon issuance of any permits that construction is not permitted and that we will not be able to perform any inspections. And the risk really is that we require you to stop work, to pull out anything that's in that ground.
Thank you, Lori. I just want council to be aware of that, because the councilor is they're gonna have questions. The developer is gonna ask them why, but if we haven't got inspection, there's no way it can continue. But anyways, any other questions from council? Councilor Van Dolen? Chris, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, do we have any idea of the dollar value of the construction work that's going to be put on hold? Maybe we should be keeping a tally or something, just to see, just so we know what we've got that's in the hopper that's coming. Thank you.
Go ahead, Lori, can you answer that?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And we're already on it. Thank you, Councillor Vanderdolen. We've got a tracking system already in place. I'm looking at the forecast, for example, of, you know, the 10 or 12 homes that were supposed to break ground and what that means dollar value. We have our data that's being pumped out by the building division on a monthly basis. We'll be taking a look at that very closely. Although we see this, you know, wonderful incline month to month, we don't know what it's going to be like next month, but we certainly will be putting a dollar value to that.
Thank you, Lori.
Great, thanks, because you know, we were going to have a really fabulous year coming up, and it's a shame that we've hit this crisis. But so I just thought we should have a total. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, through your worship, Lori. Just wondering, so our developers have been informed of these measures already. I'm sure they're well aware. They're watching this like a hawk as well to see how it's going to affect their development. So have we reached out, or have they reached out to us to find out? We know what the major developments are, so.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Malash, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Those, ironically, are the same thoughts that are swirling around in my brain. So I've already asked, you know, that we start considering a communication, an FAQ of sorts for the construction industry, for the development industry. So Chris and I, through our communications manager, will be preparing something. We already have some, you know, why not borrow, or rather take from our colleagues and take from our inspiration from our neighbors. So we already have our municipalities that we're in touch with, neighboring municipalities that have the same message, and often same developers. And so we are working together, and we will get that message out. This all came out, as you know, late Friday night or Friday afternoon. And so today we are already on it, and our brains are already spinning with what that message will mean to our builders.
That's super, thank you. Mr. Mayor, one other question. We've got, I'm just wondering with respect to our control, bylaw control officer, if he's still working. And I know it's probably difficult because it'd be hard not to have contact with individuals. But what I'm wondering is, with this quarantining and isolation and so on that's going on, I've heard rumors that the Board of Health is going to, Health Unit, Board of Health, is going to be coordinating sort of like a call-in line for anybody that's not acting in the best interest of isolation and quarantine, if they're having a party in their backyard, or you know, walking in groups, you know, of 20 or 30 people or whatever. Is it something that our bylaw control officer would be part of if that were to happen, and that we'd be in touch with the health unit to see what we can do?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Malash. So to answer the first portion of your question related to our bylaw enforcement officer, yes, Mr. Morissette is still out doing inspections. You know, this is a time in the springtime where we have matters such as fallen trees or dilapidated structures, or, you know, property standards issues. So he is still out doing those inspections. There are still outstanding infractions that he's still following up on. Ironically, today you caught us at a great time, and Mr. Nevsky would be able to, you know, answer a little bit better on what we would like to do moving forward, but working alongside OPP to enforce the total number under provincial order for those gatherings. So I will push that over to Chris if you'd like to add on, but that is something that Mr. Morissette will be working alongside OPP with. Okay,
that sounds good. Thank you.
If I may, Lori, the other municipalities, are they using their bylaw officer to enforce the this distance part?
Yeah, through your worship, I'll take that now. Yeah, we had a conference call with the OPP today to discuss just that, the partnering with bylaw enforcement and how that impacts our residents, and really what role they want us to partake in enforcing the emergency orders, the provincial orders. Where we landed was basically during working hours. If that's something that, you know, the 8:30 to 4:30 type working hours, Monday to Friday, if that's something that our enforcement officers can help with in terms of going by these parks, seeing large gatherings, they can definitely, they have the authority, they've been given the authority by the province to educate these people, talk to these people. You know, we've always been a municipality of volunteer compliance, right? And this is going to be no different than that. So it would really be an education of, hey guys, you're in a park, you shouldn't be in a park, you need to leave. And then if it elevated or it got to a point where they didn't want to listen to us, then we would call the OPP to support us. So we're trying to take that proactive first step role, which is similar to all the other municipalities. I'll be honest, we really don't have or haven't been aware of any issues. I think our biggest concern is probably going to be the beach, Colchester Beach. And that's something, the beach and the pier, when people aren't practicing social distancing on those, in those spaces. So we're working with community services and facilities to put additional signage there, to make sure there's signs not only at the entrance to the park, at the top of the ramp, but signs on the volleyball courts, signs in the middle of the beach, signs on the end of the pier, and we'll continue to work that way. If we find that we're encountering all kinds of problems, we may need to elevate that enforcement, but hopefully I think our residents are doing a good job that way, especially in the parks and those areas, and continue to do so that it allows Jake to focus on property standards issues and not worry about, you know, enforcing people congregating in parks or in backyards. So.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I just want to speak to our CAO's comment about the dock. And I know it's blocked off and it's locked. So I just want reassurance that if there's an emergency down there, police or fire or ambulance can get down there quickly because it's locked. I'm not sure if there's another way to do it, another way to block off the dock. That is a concern. And also having it so that our officers cannot drive down there and do a quick drive-by kind of makes it so you have to go on, you have to drive up at the top or you have to get out and walk. So just, I know that that's been a little bit contentious in the Colchester area, how the dock is blocked off. So if we could just speak on that for a second, that would be great.
Sure. I'll confirm with Director Community Services, Doug, but all the emergency responders have keys to that entrance, and our staff have keys. And if, although our property standards bylaw officer or bylaw enforcement officer might not have a key, but he will have a key tomorrow. So, you know, the Colchester Guardian has a key as well. I'll let Doug confirm all of that or correct me, but I'm pretty sure that all the people that need to have keys have keys.
Mr. Mayor, that is correct. OPP, fire, Colchester Guardian, and our staff all have keys.
Ambulance, fire, everybody has one.
Correct. EMS, fire, police, and Colchester Guardian.
Okay, great. Thank you, Doug. Any other questions? Okay, the next one we have here is Jeff Morrison going to speak on which one we have here now on pre-authorized payments. Jeff, are you there? There he is. Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
Through the chair, I sent an email to everybody the other day regarding the waiver of penalty and interest on property taxes to June 30th, 2020. There is one other item that I'd like to bring forward to council. We haven't had an opportunity to discuss this one, so I wanted to bring it forward to council for discussion. And that includes the waiver of interest on water and wastewater accounts until June 30th, 2020. I've been in discussions with ELK, and we can set that up and move forward with that quickly if council has an appetite for that.
Any questions from council on this one? No questions? Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you. Through your worship to Mr. Morrison, and just a general comment. I think it only makes sense with respect to waiving fees for these two items when we're already doing it for property taxes. These two items that we're charging back to residents is for use, and they're pretty well in line with the same thing as property tax. So I would say it makes sense, and I'm definitely in favor of waiving the interest penalties on these two items as well.
Need a resolution.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, I need a resolution on this one here. Councillor Bowman. And Councillor Bjorkman. All in favor, show of hands, please. Okay, it's carried, thank you. The next item we have, okay, I guess it's Jeff, it's you again for credit card payments.
Sure, through the chair. So this isn't credit card. This is individuals who remove themselves from the pre-authorized payment program. So we have a lot of individuals who are on the pre-authorized payment program. Their tax installments for the year are divided over 12 months. The goal is to get as many people as we can registered on the pre-authorized payment program. I kind of summarize this as my A+ students. They pay monthly, they're consistent. So we're getting a number calling, asking to be removed from the program. So I would like council to consider and give approval to, once they remove themselves from the program, and if they incur any back amounts, in order to be enrolled in the program, your taxes have to be current. So I would like the flexibility to offer to these individuals, once we're through this, that once they want to get back onto the program, any outstanding balances will equalize over the remaining months of the year. So if we're in July, we'll give them 6 months and we'll average that back amount over that 6 months plus the new amount that they have. So it just creates more flexibility for these individuals. So that way, once they get back onto the program, it makes it more manageable.
Good, thank you, Jeff. Any questions? Any questions? So I need a resolution on it. Resolution, please, Councillor Verbeek and Deputy Mayor Malash. All in favor of this? It's carried. Thank you. The next one would be the credit card payments. Jeff, if you want to talk on that one, please.
Yes, through the chair. This was brought up, I believe, about a month ago as it pertains to creating the flexibility to accept credit cards through over the phone. We've worked very hard to move away from that due to the fees that are associated with it, where the average percentage per credit card transaction over the phone is approximately 4 to 4.5%. Town absorbs that cost. Council had asked if there was any way to add a surcharge or a service fee to that. We did a bunch of research and reached out to our provider, and they identified that we cannot. So we do not have the flexibility to add a surcharge at the counter or over the phone. With our online tool that we have, Virtual City Hall, we do have the flexibility for that, which we will get to eventually. There's no fee being charged right now because we're working to get as many people as we can moved over. So I just wanted to report back to council that we do not have the flexibility to add a surcharge or service fee. However, we have been getting a lot of phone calls from individuals who are asking if they can pay their credit card over the phone. And we've been directing them to Virtual City Hall, and they've been more than willing to sign up and get registered. So.
Thank you, Jeff. That's puzzling. Any questions from council on this one here? No questions whatsoever. I need a resolution and no resolution. We'll do it at the end, yeah. Okay, the next one is capital projects, please. Kevin, are you there?
No, Your Worship, I'm going to take that one for now.
Okay, go ahead.
Because it encompasses all capital projects. I just wanted to have a discussion about capital projects and where we're at with them. Really where we're at, the province brought down some a reduction in essential services on Friday. Our interpretation of that is barring new residential. And from what we're seeing from other municipalities, it doesn't impact our capital construction. So we're moving ahead with everything we can at this point with a hand on the pause button if need be. Where you may see it impact our capital works are some of these larger construction contractors are shutting down themselves because of their own issues. But some are not. So it's kind of a mixed bag out there. But, we've closed tenders the last few weeks, whether they're for equipment or for large projects. You've got a few on the agenda tonight as well. So that's kind of where we're at with capital projects. Again, I think referencing back to Councillor Bonde, we're very aware of the scale in terms of our budget was balanced with the closing of the arenas and the pools. That tips the scales and it unbalances it. We're trying to see, maintain business and push forward and get things done. There might be a natural slowdown of some of these capital projects just from the delays from COVID-19, the delays from the province, the delays maybe for materials. So you might have some of these projects stretch into 2020 anyways. So we're kind of playing it by ear right now, but definitely be rest assured that this team is well aware of all those factors, both fiscally and socially, and we're trying to keep the business of the town moving forward and still maintain that balance for us financially. So as of now, I guess we're moving ahead with whatever we can. But like I said, just we won't hesitate to pause if we need to. But
thank you, Chris. I think council's well aware. We really don't know where this is going yet. This is we're in a very serious situation here, and things change daily. And if you look at the senior levels of government, daily they're changing. So just keep up the good work, staff. And keep the reports coming into us. But like I say, there's big changes coming, and I hope we carry on. I hope it doesn't impact the ratepayers and our infrastructure. Like, I want to see our infrastructure keep going, but I know there's going to be a pause. There's definitely going to be a little bit of a pause. But anyways, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, is there any questions on that in specifics, I guess, I know it's kind of a general overview of where we're at, but I didn't know if council had very specific questions to ask on capital projects and the impacts.
Good. Any questions from council at all? Councillor Bonde.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, over to our CAO. Nothing really specific. I just think it's good to have the conversation and to communicate with the public. I'm not sure what our timelines were for the Harrow Streetscape plan, but I don't think we're going to make it, or maybe we will. I don't know. But one of the points that I made to council by email was that if there's any cutoffs to utilities right now, if we have to cut off utilities and say downtown, the main street of Harrow, we have people living up there. So we just have to be cognizant of there's a pandemic, people need hydro, people need to be able to wash their hands. So I think it makes sense to go ahead with the hand on pause, because we don't know what is coming. And so I think keeping the open lines of communication is a really good thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, through your worship. That was the one I was going to mention as well. That's our largest project by far that we're that we have out there, and the most complicated as far as timelines go. I know there were a lot of tight timelines with it already, so it may be difficult. I think that we should try and march on and try and get it done if we can. But I think there's a lot of challenges in this particular project, only because of the size of it. And, you know, there's so many different pieces to it. And again, tight timelines. And it'll all depend on what the construction industry is doing, is, you know, like whether they've got people to get portions of it done that we want to have done. But I think as a council, we should probably keep pushing forward on it. The one thing that I can remember Mr. Morrison telling me is that about this project is a good chunk of, like, there's very little of it, if any of it, that pertains to current tax year dollars. That's all either reserves or grants that we're getting from other areas. So it really doesn't rely on current tax year dollars to make that project happen. So that's the one nice thing about that project. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Chris, you had a comment?
Yeah, Deputy Mayor Meloche, you bring up an excellent point there, and I wanted to pull in Jeff Morrison to speak a little bit about that structure of our capital, because our capital is you're right, just because you save X million of dollars in capital doesn't mean you're transferring it right back into operating. So I'd like Jeff to just kind of give you a high level breakdown of some of the areas where those capital budgets are pulling monies, you know, whether it's gas tax or funding, and some of the reasons why that doesn't necessarily infuse back to operating that way. Jeff?
Good. Go ahead, Jeff.
Through the chair, our capital program's pretty diverse now as it pertains to the funding mechanisms we have in place. You look back 4 years ago, the majority of our projects were funded through property taxation. But what we've done is in the investment world, it's kind of a diversified portfolio where we have funding coming from a variety of different sources. So that way, any issues like we're currently facing are mitigated because we have different streams of funding coming into it. There are portions that come from property taxes. We do have contributions to reserve, but the decisions that council made as it pertains to asset management and the life cycle contributions, those were significant, and they put us in a position where current in-year capital is only being funded at $705,000 from property taxation. The rest of it is coming from the reserve that we've built up over the last number of years. So it's put us in a pretty sustainable position. So looking at, just flipping through my budget, bear with me. Looking at the Harrow Streetscape, for example, that project is funded with $600,000 coming from other reserves, 1.5 million from grant funding, and 2.4 million from long-term debt. So that long-term debt, based on the timing of that debt, will probably impact us in 2022. So in 2022, we will have an amount coming from property tax, but once again, that's the assessment increase that we were able to absorb in 2020. So it's not new increases in tax, it's a sustainable source that we have built into the budget. So once again, we have a capital budget that's funded significantly from life cycle reserves, with only $700,000 in current year spending coming from property taxation.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, I agree with the deputy mayor. I like to see us go ahead with this project. This is such an important project, the Streetscape program. And it might be delayed. I'm not saying that, but this is something that we have to go ahead with. I strongly believe if we don't go ahead with it, I got a feeling that it might not ever get done. And that's my feeling. But anyways, any other questions from council? Okay, so we've gone through everything here. So what I need a resolution to accept the report, all the report here. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Guerin and Councillor Van Dolen. All in favor, show of hands, please. Carried, thank you.
Item 8.2 on this evening's agenda his Capital Works and Infrastructure Report 2020-02, results of requests for tender, Essex soil steel structure replacements and bridge deck rehabilitation. That said report be received, and that council awards the request for tender to Sterling Ridge Infrastructure, Inc. in the amount of $502,582.47, and this includes non-refundable HST.
I need a mover, please. Councillor Van Dolen. Seconder, Councillor.
No, I have a
question. Who had a question here?
I do. Chris.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't understand what this report, just a title on this report. It says Essex soil steel structure. What does that mean? It doesn't make any sense to me. Soil steel structure. What is that?
Chris, can you answer that, or who can answer it? Somebody just got to answer this. How about?
I can answer, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Through you, it's really just there's steel culverts now. 2 of the 3 are steel culverts now, and the other it's a mix of different types of structures. So it's basically because they're bearing on soil, they're looking at the actual structure, and that's why it's named that way. I mean, if you look at the actual title of the report and not the tender, it's actually the bridge, like the steel structure replacement and bridge deck rehab.
I just don't understand what the word soil is doing in there.
Yeah, it's just the way that the tender was written, and it could be removed, honestly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're okay. Anybody else? Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, through your worship, to Mr. Gerard. I'm just wondering, is there a timing on these projects? There's 4 projects. I'm just concerned that they would get pushed off to later in the fall. And then we always have an issue when we hard surface any roadway late in the year. It doesn't seem to take well. So I'm just wondering, has there been any timing built into the contract?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there are certain criteria for being able to start the project from the Department of Fisheries. We wouldn't be able to start the project until after July 15th. But we would have a pre-construction meeting after the project was awarded, where we would receive a schedule from the contractor. Like the RCAO mentioned, we do have our finger on the pause button just in case. We are planning for those types of contingencies. So those types of things will be planned for sure during that pre-construction meeting.
Thank you. Because I personally, I'd rather see it not even done this year if they're going to do it too late in the year, to ensure that we have a job that's done at the proper time of year, and not taking a chance that the top surface when we're finished is not done properly after we've spent that kind of money. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Looks like you have your finger on it anyway. Thanks.
Anybody else? All in favor? Scary. Thank you.
(8.3) Drainage Report 2020-01, appointment of an engineer pursuant to Section 78 of the Drainage Act to replace a culvert over the Shepley Drain. That said report be received, and that council appoints Rude Engineering Incorporated under Section 78 of the Drainage Act for the replacement culvert over the Shepley Drain.
Any questions? You got to no? I need a mover then. Councillor Verbeek and Councillor Bowman. All in favor, show of hands, please. Scary. Thank you.
Item 10, any updates from County Council this evening?
I haven't got anything.
No, nothing.
Nothing. No, we haven't.
Okay. Item 11.1, correspondence to be received. That all of the correspondence listed in 11.1 be received and where indicated to further share.
Any, doing them all. Doing them all, but yeah, we're doing them all. Any questions on any of them? Okay, we have. Councillor Bjorkman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just through you, I just wanted to point out the Association of Municipalities Ontario's flooding strategy released. Looking over a few of the things that are in there, there's a lot of really good things that are coming our way that we have kind of been pushing for. Between 2015 and 2019, there was $18 million invested in flood mapping for Southwest Ontario, and there's another 81 million available for flood mapping. So it's important that our IRCA representatives are aware of that, and that we make sure we get our share of that money that's available for that mapping. They're also looking at, well, they're not looking at it. The MNRF is the provincial lead on flooding, and they now have an online permit for breakwall and armor stone. So if somebody's having a problem, it's right after a storm, they need some work done, they don't have to go through the regular permitting plan anymore. There's an online permit process to allow you to work on your breakwall and put armor stone in. So there's some things that you're doing to kind of to try to streamline and get these things done ahead of time. The other thing that Ontario is doing is they are now approaching the federal government to reinstate the shoreline protection plan. So that's a huge thing that we've been asking ministers to do when we've been going to our conferences and the opportunities that we've had. So there's a number of things that are happening in that new their new flooding program. They're very interesting and are really going to help us out. So I just wanted to highlight those. And I think there's a couple of things that we should be able to put onto our website to help our residents, that when they're having a flooding issue, that they're aware that that's there for them. And then the province has 4 residents and homeowners. It's called the Disaster Recovery Assistance for Ontario. And they've invested money into that as well. So there's a number of things now that our residents can directly go and apply to help with the flooding issues that we're seeing along our shore. So really good stuff for us in that. Thank you.
Very good, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. There's one other item in here. There's a letter from the Municipal Engineers Association, and I just have a quick question maybe to Mr. Nepsy on this. I would imagine that we make sure that our municipal employees, all of our employees at the town of Essex, are aware of this bursary award program for potential engineering students of any employees. That's my question.
Chris?
Yep. No, we circulate the correspondence to staff. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Verbeek?
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. There was also a letter from our Bishop Fabro from the London Diocese, and he was just, applauding our municipality on our efforts and in serving the needs of the community. They, as a church, are reaching out to their shut-ins, their homebounds, their elderly, and I'm sure all of our many churches in the community are doing that. My question is, have we had any of the churches that are serving are vulnerable or shut-ins that, have we had any of these churches reach out to us besides this letter from Bishop Fabro? And
Councillor Verbeek, I don't think any churches have reached out to us that I'm aware of.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, this is the clerk. We haven't received any through the clerk's office either.
So, no, we haven't had anything, Councillor. Any other questions? Councillor Bondi?
Thank you through the chair to our CAO. The correspondence on our agenda from the Ministry of the Solicitor General on the set fines for offenses under the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act. I believe you said earlier that with the conversations with our OPP that we're kind of still taking that educational approach. But in here, they're talking about the provinces saying we can fine people. So I really believe that the sooner we all stay home, the sooner we can get back to normal, because this kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, this, for lack of better words, this kind of half-ass approach in a border city is really putting our economy and some of our residents at risk. So I don't know. I'm just of the opinion that we either need to take a heavier hand with this, or our lives are not going to go back to normal as fast as we would want them. So that's just my thoughts on that. Maybe CAO, you can confirm again, because we are going to get questions going, is your municipality fining people yet? There's, you can watch CBC, CTV, all of the news channels out of Brampton. There are many other municipalities that are going heavy and hard on this. So I'm just wondering if Windsor Essex is going to be a hot spot because of our location.
Thank you. Chris, did you want to?
Sure. I think, as noted, can we find people? Absolutely, right? The powers are deemed given to the bylaw enforcement officer, to the OPP. It goes for everything, right? And I think it's got to be that bylaw enforcement is a real judgment area, and the fine is there and the ability is there. Yes, but if you're rolling up to somewhere and there's 5 people and you ask them to leave and they leave, is that something council wants us to do? Is start throwing fines around? I guess you'd have to let us know. But in the severe instances, like we do with property standards, like we do with any of our bylaws, yes, the ability is there to fine them. And what we're hoping is that we educate residents enough where we don't need to.
Thank you, Chris. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. We have one other item on correspondence, and I'll have Jeff Morrison speak to this. It's about the BIA.
Through the chair, we received correspondence from the BIA the other day. I believe it went to all council and admin. It was just asking some questions for information as it pertains to options or relief of their members. So information was provided back that it's the decision of the board, so they will be reporting back to the board at their next meeting. And depending on what the outcome is there, they will then I will then bring something back to council. We have some time. Currently, our mill rates don't need to be put into Opta until May, so we're supporting them as they venture down this path.
Thank you, Jeff. Any questions? Okay, Councillor Bowman.
Yeah, is not the next taxation period due on the 20th of this month?
Through the chair, our due date is the 30th of the month. However, we have waived penalty and interest, or council has waived, or the town has waived penalty and interest up until June 30th. So our due date will still be April 30th. So those that can pay it, please do pay it. But those that require relief can defer those payments until June 30th.
If I may, I guess what I was considering is, would there be enough lead time between our next meeting and the due date to make the changes in the various business taxation for that time?
The first 2 installments for the year are based on the interim, which is 50% of prior year taxation. So we wouldn't be able to adjust anything until the final. Depending on what their outcome would be, that would be the final 2 installments for 2020. And that would be where the impact would be absorbed.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Vandendolen. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Yeah, I don't have any opposition to this because, well, first of all, this is a real time of hardship for them. And although it's tax money, it's not our tax money and it doesn't belong to the public, it's theirs. I can't see any reason to oppose this. And I don't know, Councillor Bjorkman, you're the expert among us on BIA since you paid these fees yourself. Is there any reason why we shouldn't agree with this? Or should we leave this until the debate?
Councillor Bjorkman, did you want to comment on this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I did respond to the letter. The BIA needs to decide how much money they need based on they've already spent money. They get two installments. They get an installment at the start of the year and they get an installment in the middle of the year. So based on what's already been spent and what events they want to put on, do they want to continue with the tree lighting? Do they want to continue with the parade? There's a number of things there that they need to weigh out. So they are going to go back, as was stated, to their board, and they will discuss how far they are. They have an employee as well that they pay. So there's a percentage that they need to keep, and they will come back to us with a request of what they're looking for. But I see no reason for us to put any roadblocks in the way either. Whatever they come back to us with, I believe will be a reasonable request.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else?
So,
okay, on the correspondence, I had a mover and a seconder. Who was the mover on all the correspondence? Who was the mover here? We did have a mover.
Mr. Mayor, you can ask.
Okay. Councillor Vandendolen's mover. I need a seconder. Councillor Verbeek, all in favor of the correspondence? It's carried. Thank you.
Show the names. 11.2.1 on the agenda, correspondence for receipt or receipt and support. Read Town of Essex committee appointments. That the correspondence advising that expressions of interest were received by the clerk's office and be received and supported. And if council so chooses to support the recommendations, the following individuals be appointed to the committees as listed on our agenda cover.
Thank you. Is there any questions on this before I ask for a mover? I need a mover then, please. Deputy Mayor Malash and Councillor Bowman. All in favor? Show of hands, please. Carried. Thank you.
Item 12 under committee meeting minutes, that the minutes of the March 16th Drainage Board meeting, consideration of report on Bayless Drain, be received, approved, and adopted as circulated.
Need a mover, please. Councillor Vandendolen and a seconder, please. Seconder, Councillor Bowman. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, item 15, notices of motion. The following notices of motion were deferred at the request of each of the presenters. They were deferred from the March 16th regular council meeting and are now being presented this evening for council's consideration. The first notice of motion, Councillor Bondi, that council discuss the road tendering of both the cold roll recycled material and the pulverized tar and chip material in order to provide a comparison of the two applications. Once again, as moved by Councillor Bondi and would require a seconder.
Is there a seconder on this one? Councillor Verbeek. Go ahead, Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just going through my notes and I found the audio of the July 3rd council meeting. So I was just listening to that and just wanted to raise it before our tenders went out. And I believe I already know what the answer is, but I just think that it's diligent to raise it because there was a lot of good conversation at the July 3rd council meeting. So just seeing if there's any appetite, other councillors at that meeting, about a year ago, a little bit more than a year ago, we decided to put the Gore and the 8th on hold to look at different products. Or no, sorry, we put it on hold because of the timing of the year, and said we were going to see how the products were holding up. So now we have 5 years of information about our roads. So I put it on there just to raise it as a discussion point because it was contentious in the last couple terms in the last couple of years, to see if there's any appetite, to see if there is a willingness of council to tender the 8th and the Gore with both products, and to see, and then once we get the tenders back in, to see what the prices are on both of them, and then we can take things from there, because we don't know what the price is if we did pulverize and tar and chip because we're not tendering them. And in that July 3rd council meeting, our CAO said we have the right to reject tenders. So it really doesn't hurt to shop around, right? Like, we want to be diligent with our taxpayer dollars and compare products at the end of the day and say, hey, we're going with cold rolled because of A, B, and C, D reasons. Where right now, the way it's gone is when we tender, the specs of the tenders are only allow cold rolled contractors to apply, and there are no contractors locally that do this product. So we're basically tendering, and only one company's picking it up. So I'm raising it on behalf of taxpayers. So that's it. Wherever it goes, goes.
Thank you. Any other questions? Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, through your worship. And I think this probably goes to Mr. Gerard or Mr. Nepsy. But Councillor Bondi was saying cold roll. Instead of doing that, we could pulverize and do tar and chip. I'm not sure what is meant by pulverize. Are we talking about tearing the road up like what we did on the 9th concession and leave it sit for a year as stone road and then tar and chip? Because pulverizing, I thought, was just tearing up the road and putting down some additional asphalt with it and laying it back down immediately. I'm not sure if we can do that because I think we've been told that there's not enough material on the road to be able to pulverize like that. Can you clarify that for me, please? Either Mr. Gerard or Mr. Nepsy.
Yeah, we'll have.
Yeah, I can take that one. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, you're correct. The pulverizing of the road is where you would actually pass through with a machine, and you would actually mix up the road to remove the hard surface and turn it into like a pulverized granular material. And then you would pack that. In some instances, you would add granular, like stone, and then surface treat over top of it. One of the big benefits, and I know council's very much aware of this, is that with cold rolled, what it does is it allows you to build up a structure of the road that doesn't already have structure. So a lot of these roads were built on topsoil or very little amounts of granular material, and they require something meat, if I can put it that way. It needs some meat to the road and add some structure to the road. So the cold rolled provides that. So what you're doing is we're looking at each road independently, and each one has a different fix, right? Not every road is going to be cold rolled. Not every road is going to be just tar and chip, but we would actually use engineering practice and guidelines to develop a proper remediation for the road. So yeah, so to your point, that is correct. Pulverizing is the grinding and then surface treating over top.
So further, Mr. Gerard, is there potential to do that on the 8th concession or some of these other roads where we want to do cold roll?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, like I said, because we look at the roads independently, those roads were identified as roads that don't have a lot of structure underneath them. This is why that they've been chosen for the cold rolled option. One of the other things we take into account is the cross section of the road and how much it needs to be repaired. So administration and the infrastructure department has recommended cold rolled because we feel that this is the best practice for these roads.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, just one more point. On another note, I did a drive-through through the community a couple weekends ago, 2 weekends ago. I put on about 110 kilometers just driving up and down different roads through the community to see what condition they were in. And I ensured that I made sure that I did go up and down the Gore and up and down the 5th, the 8th. The 8th has still got some spots in it that are pretty rough, but there are spots that are perfect as far as what I can tell, as far as being level. The Gore Road was immaculate, the part that was done with coal roll. And the 5th was, I thought, wonderful, but I don't know what others have said that it's bumpy, and I'm not quite sure why they think it's bumpy. To me, it was just like total smooth, and I had my wife with me as well, and she didn't complain about it either. Usually she lets me know if we're going down a bumpy road. Why are you driving down this bumpy road? You know, but no, I thought it was pretty good. And if that's what our administration is recommending to be the right process, it's unfortunate that we don't have somebody that's local that can do it, because obviously we'd like somebody local to do it, but it very much compares to several years ago when we wanted the right stone on our gravel roads, and unfortunately we didn't have the right stone locally, and there was a real push from local individuals that wanted us to use local stone, and we had to get past that and say that no, we have to go with the right product for what we're looking for. And it's unfortunate that we don't have somebody local that we can work with. The one thing that I think we ran into too was there was a communication problem, I think, with the firm that actually did the work. They did it a little bit late, and I think administration has to really work closely with if the same individual gets the contract, has to work really closely with them to try and ensure we don't run into the problems that we've ran in the last couple of times that we've used them. And to have it happen a third time where we may potentially have issues, it's not really the product I find, but it's the like, we've got to be careful. I know I've got to be careful saying this too, but whoever gets the contract regardless has to be, we have to make sure that we stay in touch with that contractor, whoever it is, to make sure that we're not put into a jeopardized position with trying to say this is a good product and the circumstances make it a bad product because of the things that go on with the process. So that's my only point. And I think there's a lot of council members that would probably agree with that, in the sense that we want to make sure that we watch this project really well. We want this to go off well. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Malash. Just to add to that, I know at the beginning we had problem on the 3rd, but that was because of the time of year they put it in. But if you look at the rest of the road they did, it's perfect. The road is perfect, and Gore is now. Anyways, Councillor Vandendolen, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I want to say that I'm strenuously opposed to delaying any of this road work again. We shouldn't have delayed it last year, and I sure as heck don't want to delay it again this year. It would be doing a terrible disservice to our residents who are already justifiably angry with us for not doing enough road work. And the process that Councillor Bondi seems to dislike so much is fine for the rest of us. And to paraphrase the governor of the state next door, let's pave the damn roads. We got the money, we got the budget, we put out the tender. Let's do it this summer, not next summer, not the summer after. We got to do it. I think the process is fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bjorkman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to speak to it, last year I was one of the ones who said, let's put things on hold. Let's have a look, because we were having some issues with those roads. I also talked about putting them both out to tendering both ways so that we would get an idea of what the costs were. Now, what we did get was a lesson in what the costs are. And I went back and I reviewed those notes, and I have them here. So I'm just going to trying not to bore you, but I'm going to quickly go over what was discussed. Our tar and chip level that we put on both, whether we pulverize or do cold rolled, the ceiling of that is $18,000 to $20,000 a kilometer, and it's good for 4 to 7 years. So we know that we're looking at roads, regardless of which way we build it. Every 4 to 7 years, we're going to put that top on it. And Chris and Mr. Gerard, feel free to jump in when I say something wrong. The traditional pulverizing aggregate tar and chip, we generally use when the road has lost its shape, needs new base work, and that's 100 to 110,000 per kilometer. And that's good for 4 to 7 years before we expect to put another layer on top. Not completely redo it, but another layer of tar and chip. The cold rolled, whereas the road has kept its shape, the base is in good condition, or we're afraid if we dig it up, we're going to find things that aren't going to be good to us, but it's a decent base, that we have at 105 to 115,000 per kilometer. Again, expect 4 to 7 years of that based on the road and the wear, when we'll have to tar and chip it again. So the costs are not really all that different. We're looking at 10%, 15%, probably different depending on the road that we're working with and the conditions that they're in. So looking at that, I went out and I mean, everybody else has, but I've been driving all these roads a lot this year, especially considering I drive from Colchester to Windsor every day. So I just took a different route every day. I've been through it in the rain. I've been through it in the snow. I've been through it in all of it. And I've driven our traditional roads and I've driven our cold road. And I drive the Gore probably 3 times a week. After looking at these roads and looking at the conditions they're in, I don't have a preference for one or the other. I don't see a difference in the finish that we've attained. So it comes down to, why are we choosing the finish that we put on this road? Why are we choosing to do road in a certain manner? Again, I come down to it, I'm not the expert. Our staff goes out, they look at the roads, they make a decision, they come back to us and they say maybe it could be 10% cheaper if we go this way or the other. However, the best road or the best way to fix this road and make it a road the residents will be happy with is to do pulverize, is to do cold roll, is to, which we've talked about now because we've noticed at our corners, we may have to asphalt where our concession roads meet county roads, just because based on the heat and the wear, the weight of trucks and things, they're tearing things up at those corners. So we've already determined that we're going to need to do that to protect our investments that way. So I have no problem saying whichever way administration and our roads department says this is the best road that we can build for the residents in this situation. Either one of them, I'm good with. So I've taken my time. I was, like I said, one of the ones that wanted to hold back. Let's spend some time. Let's get some data. Let's look at years of construction. And I have to say I'm satisfied with both. So that'll be my position. I'm happy to support what our road department decides is necessary for these roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Verbeek, did you have a question?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just listening to everybody and I appreciate all the input. My thoughts right from the start was I kind of understood why Councillor Bondy was bringing this forward. And especially now, especially now in these times, I can't get behind just putting our roads to tender in a fashion that would alienate or eliminate the ability of our local people to bid on them. In every case possible, I would want that we could put our tenders forth in a way that all of our locals could bid on them for the work. Also, I mean, Kevin suggested that perhaps the 8th and the Gore don't have the meat, the ability to support any other surface than the cold rolled. And I want clarity on that. Is that indeed a fact? Because if that's the case, then I mean, we do need to get these done, right? I know that the 8th just had 26 culverts put in last year. So I would think if there was any, structural problems underneath we were going to encounter, we would know that probably by now, right? So I for one would like to see all our roads go to tender in a fashion that would not block any of our local contractors from bidding on them. Thanks.
If I may, Councillor Verbeek.
Sure.
It was discussed already that we haven't got a contractor in this area that does Cold Road. So you're looking at two different products here. You're looking at tar and chip. You're looking at Cold Road. And once again, I have to agree with Councillor Bjorkman. We have an expert. We have proper people in place that recommend what is best for the road. We hire these people to do that job. But I mean, I see where you're coming from. I'd like to give it to a local contractor myself, but we haven't got them out there. That's a problem. So anyways, Councillor Guerin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Kevin. Kevin, you brought up the 8th concession not having the meat required to do a different process other than the cold roll. You come from another municipality. I'm just curious. I've been hearing that other municipalities are not using the cold roll product. Am I to assume that Essex is the only municipality locally that doesn't have enough meat in their roads to do nothing but the cold roll process?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, I like you said, I've come from 2 other municipalities where situations very similar to this have come up, where municipality wants to try new products and do trials of different products in order to see if we can get the longevity out of roads. By no means is Essex the only municipality that has roads that don't have a lot of structure underneath it or granular underneath it. There's other roads as well. But one of the concerns which the cold roll helps with is if you do disturb that soil, you don't know what to expect. So if you were to remove the tar and chip road that's existing and replace it with just tar and chip, and you disturb the soil underneath, you could end up having issues with the structure of the road afterwards. And that unknown is costly to municipalities, where I'm sure the town of Essex has seen that before in the past as well, where a project gets started and you see how much more it costs when unexpected costs come up. I compare it to, renovating your kitchen. You think you're just going to remove the kitchen counter, but once you remove the counter, you find black mold, and next thing you know, you're ripping out the walls and you're ripping out the cabinets. It's the same type of thing where you just can't expect all those costs. So cold roll does offer that flexibility as well, and it does create a good product for the future rehab of those roads as well. So when you come to do these roads afterwards and rehab them again, you can look at alternative means of doing those roads, like just simply tar and chipping it, or adding granular and tar and chipping it for a lower cost. But the problem is that really that in a lot of these roads, it's just tar and chip and maybe a couple inches of gravel.
Okay. Councillor Guerin, did you want?
Yeah, okay, so further to that then, Kevin, without putting you on the spot, you have worked in a couple other municipalities in our surrounding area. So they're not using cold roll to your knowledge or to our knowledge, and they are taking the chance when they're doing the road. Have you seen a lot of, in your experiences, have you seen a lot of these roads get done without the cold roll and end up having a big problem and cost to the municipality after?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, I have. I've have experiences at both the town of Kingsville and the town of Lakeshore, where we completed a road and it didn't last as long as we were hoping it would. And those roads, I'm not going to say that they were only tar and chip roads, but that instance can happen in any road project. And what the town's trying to do is mitigate that risk by using alternative solutions to rehab roads. And cold rolled is a good opportunity to do that.
Okay, Councillor, anybody else? Rob, did you?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and I apologize for interrupting the deliberations, but I think the clerk needs clarification on the motion itself. The motion itself states that council discuss the possibility of road tendering of both applications.
Right.
But the motion seems to fall short of providing definitive direction for administration to consider both. Is that the intent behind this motion, or is it merely for that discussion, which in essence is taking place as we speak?
Councillor Bondi?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the clerk, that is correct. I just wanted to have a discussion because I just think that it's healthy to have discussions, and there's no other tools for councillors to have discussions other than a notice of motion. So maybe the motion would just be to receive that we've had a discussion.
Yeah, I think that's a proper thing, Councillor. Chris, did you want to speak? Go ahead. Chris?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Through your worship, just a few points to iterate. I think Kevin did a good job of the explanations on the flexibility and the reasons why. I think I just wanted to stress to council, because I've heard it from a few councillors now, that we're only tendering roads that only suit one contractor. And the roads budget is more than just the two roads we're talking about. And I think that's lost sometimes in the discussion. We have a budget line item for tar and chip roads. We have budget line items for asphalt roads. We have the budget line items for cold rolled, and the fourth concession, which was added to the budget. We're working through what's that's going to be. It will not be cold rolled because the road is too far out of shape right now. It may be some variation of a pulverizing or a milling with tar and chip. So, and then, you know, typically we do North Malden, which is another application. So we have instances where, you know, in this budget alone, you've got 4 different road methodologies of construction, which are open to a myriad of contractors that can do all sorts of those, whether it's, like I said, tar and chip, asphalt, cold rolled. So that was one. And the other thing is just to stress again is the reasons for, you know, and Kevin touched on it, the longevity of the road. So yes, you're right, Councillor Bjorkman. You know, anytime you throw a tar and chip layer on there, you want to touch that again in 4 to 7 years. With the cold rolled, as Kevin noted, what it allows you to potentially is something more in 4 to 7 years. You might be able to do a reclamation now where you're doing similar to what we did on North Malden and not simply go back to tar and chip, right? We've talked about our roads before, and traffic's changing, weight of traffic's changing, size of vehicles changing. You know, we are continually looking for road construction that's up to snuff, and you know, tar and chip for some of these vehicles and the weather we're having and whatnot, with the base we have sometimes doesn't work, and that's all we're doing here. So I just wanted to stress those points.
Thank you, Chris. Go ahead.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we do have a motion, and that's clarified with the mover on the motion. The motion is simply that council acknowledge having had a discussion this evening on the possibility of the road tendering of both applications. As moved by Councillor Bondi, seconded by Councillor Rubik.
Yeah, all in favor of that? Carried.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, our second notice of motion for consideration this evening is Deputy Mayor Meloche, that administration prepare a report on the town's policy on special needs street signs and warning signs, as moved by Deputy Mayor Meloche, and would require a seconder this evening.
Councillor Garen's going to second it. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just realized I had a request from a resident for an autism sign about, it's going back 2 years ago almost now, because it was before the election. And I I had thought that it was being handled, that the sign was going to be going up. And I got a call back from the resident and continuously followed up and found out that we're not installing these kind of signs anymore. And the reason being that they're hard to manage. They go up and then there's no definite amount of time that we have that the sign stays up and so on. And I think that this is something that I would like to see continue in the community. I know that not far down from the road from where I live right now, there's a sign up for a child that has autism in our neighborhood. And the traffic moves pretty quickly down my road. I live on a county road 15. And there's times where that child is out. And I'm sure it's a very concerning factor for the parents that at any point in time, they're watching him consistently and very carefully, but there's at any time could start running and dart out and maybe run across the road without even any consciousness of the fact that he's running out in traffic that's speeding the way it is. It's an 80-kilometer-an-hour zone. I mean, I don't think that you're going to see the road turn to a 60-kilometer-an-hour road or even a 50-kilometer-an-hour zone. And we're probably like to try and avoid that from happening, particularly on county roads, because those are roads that are meant to be out there that are heavy or graded as far as the structure of the road. And we try and get the heavy traffic to go down those roads. So with that being said, I still think that there's a need for us to have signs in the community. I mean, we do put them up for animal crossings. I think for deaf, I think for blind, autistic children, adults, that this is something that's needed. I know that a lot of individuals, when they see the sign, they drive with more caution because they know they've been made alert that there's someone with a potential hardship in life that causes them not to be able to notice the traffic as well. And I think it's a necessary thing in our society, particularly with the speeds that our traffic goes, and to make people alert that they should be watching out for these individuals. So with that said, I'd like for our administration to take a look, and I have a proposal that what we do is when we put a sign up that I'd like our administration to come back and say, like when we put a sign up, we'll put it up, but with contact information, maybe have a cell phone number and an email address of the person who's requested the sign, and track it. Not just put the sign up at somebody's request, but have the ability to go back and talk to that person, let's say 5 years down the road or 7 years down the road, to say, does this sign necessarily still need to be up? And that was one of the hardships that the town was looking at, was because when does the sign come down? Is that person still living in that neighborhood that needs the sign to be there for them? And I understand that totally. But I think what we need to do is on the sign have an expiration date, that the sign comes down if it hasn't been requested to remain, or if the sign has become aged and weathered, that the sign comes down, and we only replace it if it's requested to be put up again. So I'd like for our administration to come back with some kind of program to present to council, and rather than just saying, let's continue the way we've been doing it, just haphazardly putting them up on a request, but come up with some kind of log that we can keep track. And so that, once a year in the spring, we look at all the ones that have over the last year that have come to the end of their lifespan, and those signs are taken down. Thank you.
Anybody else from council? Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a a good initiative to jump into. I have had a little bit of experience in my ward. I had a handicap parking sign up in front of a house, and then the child actually died, and the sign was up for a couple years after because we weren't communicating. It is down now. So I think there could be some infrastructure out there, or some not infrastructure, but some way to track this. There has to be a program out there that can track signs like this. And maybe we just maybe need to get caught up, get all the signs labeled. Maybe it's a summer student that's hired to track them, to get the information. You know, my only one worry about this whole thing right now is that the amount of reports that we're still waiting for, right? So the first thing we need to do is get a tracking system with reports coming to us. But I definitely think that this should be one. And I think once the rubric of what's going on gets put up there, it'll just be putting the signs in. And before, when I've asked for some signs, and I think it was just the caution children playing signs. So maybe those are separate from the other ones, because when I've asked administration for the caution children playing signs, their explanation makes a lot of sense. My community doesn't like to hear it, but people often say, in a subdivision, can we get caution children playing signs up? It really does give a false sense of security for those neighborhoods. So I don't know if those signs, if Deputy Mayor, if those signs are involved in it. I think we need to, as council, make a list of what signs we want and say, because it comes down to liability too, right? Maybe there's a liability component. If we put signs in urban neighborhoods that say caution children playing, are we giving that false impression? So I do think that this could possibly be a big can of worms for us to talk about and discuss, but I think we're on the right track. Thank you.
Anybody else from council? Councillor Bowman?
Yeah, I think the autism factor in the community is growing all the time. And I think something along those lines, the autistic kids are very unpredictable and very difficult to train in a lot of areas. So that creates a lot of problems for families as they move forward in their communities. And I think some form of control on these signs makes a lot of sense and moving forward. I know that's one area that has been increasing over the last few years. So if something can be put in place, and I also agree with the issue of signs being left up far beyond their useful time, the tracking system, and I agree with the deputy mayor that a 5-year follow-up on them, or if all the information is there, all it would take is a call. Is it still needed? And if there's no response, obviously it's not needed anymore. So something like that, I think, makes a lot of sense. So I'd be supportive.
Deputy Mayor Malash, you had another.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I forgot to mention too, along with the report, a development of a request form. What I found too was it was very confusing as to who I needed to talk to, and the same with the resident. They weren't sure who they needed to talk to. They kept getting pointed into different directions as to who they should speak with. So detail as far as which department would handle it, and some kind of form, maybe if we could even put it on the website for people to fill out and send in. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vanendel, you had your hand up. Yep, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I'm not opposed to any of this, although I don't think it's necessary to track the animal signs. The ones regarding human situations might have to be tracked and changed, but deer crossings and turtle crossings, I don't think they change for centuries. So I don't know if we need to add that extra labor to this tracking system. We want people tracking and checking on deer crossing signs every 5 years. I mean, the deer aren't going to change. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Chris, did you want to speak on this? Pepsi, did you want to speak on this or no?
I think Kevin might have some insight for you. I mean, Kevin's going to be the one who's going to be doing a report, but I'll leave this one to Kevin.
Okay, go ahead, Kevin. And have you? got a comment on this one?
Yeah, sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, we dealt with this at two of the municipalities that I worked for in the town of Kingsville and the town of Lakeshore, where council requested a report of similar nature to this. The growing trend is that, like you said, because it's difficult to manage and it leads to pollution, the potential risk of false sense of security, that municipalities are moving away from putting these signs up. I'm happy to write a report for you and indicate those pros and cons and some of those items and for council to deliberate on and make a decision. But the likelihood of the recommendation being that we wouldn't put these signs up is very high.
Thank you, Kevin. To Deputy Mayor Malash, are you okay with that if to come back with the report? Deputy Mayor?
Yes, I'd like to see is I'll make a motion that we send this off to administration to come back to council with some kind of report on signs in the community.
Thank you. I need a second.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Hold on.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. That is the motion on the floor right now. It's already been seconded by Councillor Guerin.
Okay. All in favor of that motion? Carried. Thank you.
Our third notice of motion, 15.1.3 on this evening's agenda, Councillor Verbeek, that council discuss and have administration look into the possibility of having surveillance cameras installed at Coan Park, as moved by Councillor Verbeek and would require a seconder.
Need a seconder for Councillor Verbeek, Deputy Mayor Malash. Go ahead, Kim.
Okay, hi, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, this was on our agenda well over a month ago when it was a little more timely after our park had been, vandalized and our some severe damage to a diamond or two. But we deferred because of the COVID crisis we're in, pandemic we're in. So my ask would be to discuss council, have the conversation about using our council contingency fund to cover half of the cameras to be put in at Coan Park. So Mr. Sweet has, had some costing done, and it would cost between $18,000 and $23,000. So our half would be about $11,500, which is a small portion of the contingency fund that we have $50,000 to use over 12 months, which we're already 4 months into. I printed off a letter from a resident who would have made a delegation. It's a short letter had we been having holding our council meeting in the regular fashion. Also, council would have received, but it was it was before this all began, a letter from Coan Park, a request from the committee asking that we support putting in these surveillance cameras. So the letter is from Jim Malash, who was on Coan committee. He's our vice chair. He's been there for 12 years. And he's seen the park endure vandalism, graffiti, smash and grab, destruction of property, and nuisance activity. It's a time to put an end to the costly yearly damage control that has become a permanent notch in our financial coffers. There was $2,500 worth of broken windows, cashiers, and new frames and loss of product just in our canteen alone. The washroom stalls have been damaged, light fixtures broken, graffiti painted on the pavilion, property damage consisting of ruts in the grounds to multiple diamonds, which needs loads of dirt, roller rental and repair, plus extensive labor. The surveillance cameras installed at Coan Park would benefit in many aspects. They will provide a simple deterrent to the protection of the park's assets. It will be cost-effective way to deter, document, and reduce the crime. The cameras are an efficient crime control tool, which increase the probabilities of the arrest and punishment. It's also a safety net for the 47,000 people who use the park on a yearly basis, a prevention of for the vandals and the criminals will aid in the law enforcement with material evidence. And this is a major problem that seems to be getting worse. So please take into consideration supporting these cameras. Now, I know some will comment that we do give Cohen a good chunk of money. And I do want to take into account that a lot of the money that that goes into the budget is relies on the leagues that will be looking at a top-notch facility that's kind of hard to maintain if we're having vandals come in and tear up the diamonds. When so my request is that we discuss this, and that I ask for Jeff Morrison, our Director of Corporate Services, to give us a little bit of an outline on our council contingency fund, what it's used for, and if this request would fall into that criteria, please.
I thank you, Councillor. I think Doug wanted to speak on. Go ahead, Doug.
Perfect.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Van Beek has done a good summary in terms of quotes. One thing that wasn't mentioned, I just want to make sure council is aware, if council does wish to proceed on this manner, you still need to contact the town of Amherstburg, because they'd have to pay half. So if you move that way, at least a recommendation first should be maybe sending a letter to Amherstburg if they're on board.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Doug. Anybody else? Councillor Bondi?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support this request. I think it's proactive, and I think in situations like this, now we have COVID, we could pop up the cameras instantly and see if there are people gathering. So I think it could use more than one. It would serve more than one purpose. Time and time again, things have come up where we've had like a one-time capital infusion to something. I'm on the dog park committee. I've been on there for now, I don't know, 9 years. But one of the questions came up from council this year is, why was the budget so high this year? Well, we had to put $10,000 into capital infrastructure. So I view this as kind of similar. It's a one-time proactive measure. I'm actually a little embarrassed that I'm a councillor here and I didn't know that they didn't have cameras. Like, I believe all of our parks should have cameras in this day and age. And I believe that the benefit will pay off. And it's a small ask. We have the $50,000 there. And if you kind of look at, say 50,000 divided by 4 wards, this is the chunk of money that, perhaps we could give to the McGregor area. And I see no better time than to move forward with this. So I will be supporting it. And I hope that that council does. And when we do, I'll ask for a recorded vote as well, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Darren, you had a question on this one?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think the cameras will definitely help. We don't have them in any of our parks, I don't believe, outside of our rec facilities and stuff. But just, I know the damage that was done was somebody driving in and tearing up the grass and that. Just curious, Councilor Beek, if you could, I'm just looking at the Google Earth of the park, and I've participated in that park many times. The only ins would be through the drives at the front of Coan Park and where the steam and gas is, because there's a ditch line across the front there. So were those gates closed? How did they access the property? And I'm just concerned about when you got that quote for the cameras, were they going to be able to put a camera out near the road to capture the vehicles coming in? Because it is quite a distance from the road and the entrance into the park, as opposed to where the concession stand is.
Go ahead, Doug.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, we worked with the COAC committee, particularly their secretary on location. They see the 14 cameras are around the pavilion, shooting out towards your baseball fields, etc. So there's nothing right at the gate. However, that can change. This was just to get a quote, see what the ballpark of the pricing. So if 1 or 2 cameras have to move, it could be an issue in terms of connectivity, but those are right now based on 14 around the pavilion from what the committee provided to us.
Go ahead, Councillor Darren. Further?
Yeah, so Councillor Beek, maybe you can answer it as well. Those gates, I mean, I know they probably make an effort to close them at the end of the night. I don't think there is any other access though into the park other than those 2 entry points. at the Steam and Gas and at the front of the Coan Park. Do you know if the gates were closed that night?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Guerin, I don't know if the gates were closed, but I do know along the front, you know, a fair amount of that ditch is pretty shallow. It could be driven through with a larger vehicle, but I don't know for a fact, but my guess is that a lot of the smash and grab and the vandalism and the spray paint issues that they've had in the past were walk-ins, because they're, you know, you can access from the sides or from the front by foot. And there certainly would be, I mean, the gate is not going to stop the all-terrain vehicles. I know with this, being home with this COVID, I can't believe the all the four-wheelers and all-terrains that are tearing up the county side. So I don't think a gate would prevent that. But I don't know exactly whether the gate was closed, but they did access through the steam and engine drive.
Anybody else? I have a question. Go ahead, Councillor Vandendel. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. It took a minute. Okay. Well, if I'm in the unlikely circumstance that Amherstburg supports this, I'll go along with it. But I just want to point out there are a lot of flaws to this argument and to this situation. First of all, I got calls from some of my farmer constituents after this event saying, "Oh, welcome to our world. We've had this happening to us for 20 years. Why is Coan Park worthy of all this protection when they don't get any protection? They don't have, I mean, one of my farmer buddies has pictures of people on ATVs with their license plates who ripped up his wheat field. It cost him thousands, and the OPP still wouldn't lay a charge, you know, and yet we're going to protect Coan Park from pickup trucks and ATVs and the yahoos who drive them. These cameras are not going to change those yahoos from being what they've always been and always will be. Secondly, contingency funds are for emergencies. This is not an emergency, and it's not even a major problem, as somebody claimed. It's like I said, it's just some yahoos. And finally, this was an item, one of a massive list of asks from the Coan organization during the budget process. They asked for more items costing more money than all the other organizations in town put together. And they were unsuccessful in getting this during the budget. And to bring this back in this manner at this time as a notice of motion is an attempt to do an end run around our budget process. We have a nice, organized, decent budget process. And if we start doing it, funding things this way, then our spending is going to descend into a chaotic free-for-all where we're all just trying to grab the contingency money for our own little projects in our own wards. So, you know, I think we're going about this the wrong way. We shouldn't be doing it at this time of year. We should put it back in next year's budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? Councillor Verbeek.
Again, I would, especially after Councillor Vanderdolen's comments, I would like to hear from Jeff Morrison on our the outline of our council contingency fund and its use and how and whether or not this does actually fall right into the criteria, the outline of what this fund is for. Also, yes, indeed, the Coan Park has asked for surveillance cameras in the past. And as a town property, just like as a farmer, it would be on their shoulders to install their own surveillance cameras if they felt that it would save them thousands and thousands of dollars in potential, you know, identifying criminals and possibly even, you know, preventing or diverting some damage to their properties. Then that would be on them as the property owner to put in the cameras. Just as we are partial owner, this is our park. We have over 47,000 residents use this facility every year. So yeah, it would be on the property owner's shoulders to burden the cost of these surveillance cameras if they felt it would help them.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? Councillor Bowman.
Yes, just one question I had. On the cameras themselves and the recordings, who maintains this? Who keeps the records? And who's responsible for the distribution of information that it collects?
Doug? Doug, can you answer that?
You, Mr. Mayor, all the information would go back to our corporate services, in particular IT area. And for anybody to view that, we actually have a policy and form that must be filled out to view it. So if this would proceed, obviously talk with the town of Amherstburg in terms of their policies. But with our current policies, the town would maintain that data.
Thank you. Thank you, Doug.
And just to follow up on that, I would just like to say, I think it makes sense because it's in our municipality, so it would make sense that the system that's already in place is there to look after that type of thing. I'm in favor of moving ahead with it. I'm not sure it should come out of the contingency fund or not, but I'll reserve judgment of that to hear the further arguments.
Thank you, Councillor. I strongly believe it's a budget item myself, but just to add to this, Councillor Verbeek, you said it's, I think you said it, one of the councillors said that the from the roadway in there, it's a very, very small drop there, very small drop. And hey, I have no problems with the cameras, but are the cameras going to catch these guys? I strongly believe they're not. There's too big of an area there. And how many cameras are we talking here, Doug? Do you know, roughly? How many cameras would we need?
It was based on 14 cameras.
14 cameras. So to catch these people, we're gonna have to put all these cameras all the way along the roadway there, because that's the only way they're gonna get in. And a four-wheeler can get in there very, very easily at the far end, all the way along. I don't know if a camera is gonna catch them, to be honest with you. I really don't. Good idea. I'm not against the idea, but are we going to catch them? We just had one go through Harrow and did damage in Harrow twice in Harrow. They did damage. So, anyways, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, through your worship. A couple of things. I believe that the steam and gas engine club, which is on the property, already has some cameras installed watching on their property because they've had issues with break-ins as well. I'm looking to see what Jeff has to say as well, Mr. Morrison, on this as far as using our contingency fund. This, and as Councillor Verbeek had mentioned, this is protecting our property. The town owns the property, and this is the reason why we would install cameras. And we have, Coan Park has had that in the budget for request for a number of years when we started putting in cameras back, I think 4 or 5 years ago at the arenas, and then we moved along and put some at the harbor. We are trying to put cameras up to protect a number of our properties. And this just happens to be one park where we do have a lot of infrastructure, and maybe not just for the fields, but for the ball diamonds themselves. There's a lot of effort put into it, and a lot of money put into the diamonds themselves. If they get torn up, it'd be hard to get them back into condition, and a lot of dollars as well. But the buildings have been broken into a number of times. I know sometimes the police have asked, when I was sitting on the committee, the police would ask us to leave the gates unlocked, only because if there's an issue for them to get in, they want to be able to quickly get in with their cars back to some of the pavilions, which are off the road, rather than park their car at the front and then have to run up to the pavilion or walk or whatever. By then, whoever was there doing whatever they were doing have escaped, because there are other ways out of the park that you can walk out of the park, maybe not drive, but as I can't remember who mentioned it, I think maybe Councillor Bondi was that, or Councillor Verbeek did mention it, now that I remember, that there's a lot of foot traffic that goes through there after hours in the dark, and any one of those persons could potentially do some damage. The other thing I want to mention too is once we do have surveillance there, there's going to be signs that are going to be put up on the fence along the roadway that would say this property is under camera surveillance. That alone is going to curtail a lot of activity happening because the people know there are cameras there watching their every movement. They're going to be a lot more careful about what they do because they're going to be on film. There's a lot of things that we do that are outside of the budget as well. The next notice of motion is going to be something that's going to be outside of the budget. We're going to be talking about spending a lot of money on an asset that's not even particularly ours. So I think that this is a good reason for spending some money. I don't think it's huge dollars. And it's something that they have been asking for a number of years. And I understand their plight. They've had a number of break-ins. It's in a desolate location. I don't know. I agree with Councillor Verbeek that this is a worthy cause. It's unfortunate that we didn't pass it in the budget, but we didn't. Thank you.
Councillor Bjorkman.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. We have to look at this place. This is a multi-million-dollar facility that we share with Amherstburg. We sometimes talk about it as, well, it's Coan Park. Try to build some baseball diamonds. Try to put in stages. Try to put in all the infrastructure that's there. I think this is a reaction that happens when something gets broken into. Speaking of somebody who just had a window kicked in his business and then realized, you know what, I need to do a little more for myself to protect this side of my building and make sure there's proper lighting, and then I've got an alarm that's going to go off there. You react to things when something bad happens. We don't worry about it while things are going good, but right now there are things happening, and there's going to be more, just based on where we are with this whole issue going forward. So to me, it's more than just four-wheelers. This is about break and enter. It's about vandalism. It's a need to protect our investment. We've got a lot of money tied up in that. So the other thing that could happen is once we invest in this that way, we may be able to save on insurance. Our administration should look into when we're putting in more to help protect what's there, perhaps we can get a break on our insurance. And I also 100% believe Amherstburg needs to share in this cost. So I'm 100% in favor of doing what we need to protect our assets. We're doing it with our other ones. And again, this isn't just a couple of baseball fields and a soccer field down the road. This is a very expensive facility. And right now we need to protect all of those things. So I would be in favor of having administration go back, look at this, talk with Amherstburg and see what we can get done. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Guerin, did you have a comment? Councillor Verbeek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is this where I close before we vote? Because I'm just going to comment a little bit on some comments that came up. Thank you, Councillor Bjorkman. You're right. It does seem like a little bit reactionary, but in reality, the park, our park, has suffered a lot of vandalism, break-ins, and as the deputy mayor pointed out, there's been a significant cost involved. A lot of the Coan Park Committee, which operates that park for our town, they encounter a great deal of financial loss every time that they are hit by some criminal activity. And so that's why it has come up as a budget request year after year. Because they recognize that the cost savings that they could encounter by having these surveillance cameras. So they have asked in the past for this reason. We haven't heard from Mr. Morrison, and I was just wondering before we vote on whether or not I'm asking for $11,500, half of the cost of the surveillance, with if Amherstburg is willing to kick in the other half, which they've been pretty good in the past when we've had outside of budget requests, like for our accessible picnic tables last year. So.
Thank you. Jeff, did you want to comment on this? Jeff?
Sure. Through the chair. So first question was related to the capital contingency. So that council capital contingency is included in the budget. It's $50,000 and it's for in-year expenditures that fall outside of the budget process. So throughout the year, there's always surprises that pop up. The last couple of years, the the expenditures that I can think of are related to stop signs with flashing lights on the top because there were issues that popped up during the year. So council made a decision to fund those. So it's for projects that fall outside of the capital budget within a year.
Thank you. I just have one question before we vote on this. Maybe Deputy Mayor Malash or Councillor Verbeek can answer that.
Point of order. Councillor Verbeek is the last person to speak. She's already said she was doing her wrap up, so we're all done.
Well, whatever. I was just going to ask if you whatever. Okay, whatever. Okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, based on the discussion, can I propose a friendly amendment for Councillor Verbeek and Deputy Mayor Malash, simply to add direction to administration to contact and ask the town of Essex for their corresponding commitment.
Is that good?
Okay. So on the recorded vote, as requested by Councillor Bondi, to the question that council discuss and have administration look into having surveillance cameras installed at Coan Park, and that administration further contact and ask the town of Essex for their corresponding commitment. On the question, Councillor Bondi, how do you vote?
I support. I believe you mean Amherstburg, though, on your letter.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, my apologies. Yeah. Councillor Vanderdolen?
Support.
Councillor Bowman?
Support.
Mayor Snively?
Support.
Deputy Mayor Malash?
Support.
Councillor Guerin?
Support.
Councillor Verbeek?
Support.
And Councillor Bjorkman.
Support.
With a recorded vote of 8 in support and none opposed, the motion carries. Our last notice of motion this evening, 15.1.4 on the agenda, as moved by Councillor Bjorkman, that the council discuss ways to appropriate funds through, but not limited to, the sale of existing surplus properties, including part of the Colchester Schoolhouse property. And whereas the town of Essex wishes to have a tourist information center in the south end of the town, preferably on County Road 50, and whereas the various businesses of the town of Essex will benefit from the added exposure, and whereas the preferred location, being the old schoolhouse in Colchester, is years and hundreds of thousands of dollars away from use as a tourist information center, and whereas this council understands that residential and commercial development in the south end of the town is accelerating, that the council of the town of Essex therefore resolve to donate $100,000 to the John R. Park Homestead Education Center in return for a designated tourist information center named for the town of Essex. Once again, as moved by Councillor Bjorkman and would require a seconder.
Need a seconder, please? Councillor Verbeek. Go ahead, Councillor, if you wanted to speak on it.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we've had the conversation when Urca was out to speak to us. They talked about what this facility will mean for the John R. Park Homestead, for the education and the saving of our cultural history. Just a couple numbers to remind us about. Visitations to the homestead in 2016 were 12,500. They're now $18,000 yearly. Their hope is to expand that by 25% in 3 years with the use of this facility. Student field trips in 2016 were 4,500. They're up to 7,000 now. This will allow to have the addition will allow the full bus visit. And one of the issues with school kids is having enough people, enough room to bring a full bus load out, because the bus is the most important or most expensive part of the trip. This will allow full classes and full buses to come out and take part in their educational programs. In questioning the hours of operation, how this will help, this will actually, through April to October, in season, it'll be 7 days a week that they would be open. They have the tourist information center in there, as well as all of the historical about the area, things that are going on. We talked to them with regard to parking, the limited parking there. And they've actually made an arrangement with Priscilla's, which is now up on Isler Road, just up from there, that they can have parking up there and bring people down to the center. The center is expected to generate more revenue for IRCA, which will offset the cost of the wages, because what we're actually going to receive is that the people that are working at the center are going to partner with TWEPI and have training through TWEPI to help them be better ambassadors for our area. And this is something that County Road 50 has long called for in the expansion of what's available there. We've got support from Explore the Shore. They've got support from Oxley Vineyards, the Fruit Wagon group of businesses. It's a positive step for us. We've wanted to do something at the schoolhouse. However, the actual costs with regard to continuing on with the schoolhouse are great. Now, one of the good things about this, I've actually been contacted by someone and a couple of people who are looking at forming a Friends of the Schoolhouse committee to actually do some work to get things moving out there. So there's a couple synergies here that work well together. I think that the promotional opportunities that'll arise from this are going to benefit everybody out on County Road 50. So I'm looking for support. I'm not asking for this to be a tax item, as I stated in there. This is something that we can fund through taking an asset that we have right now that we're not using, selling that, and using the proceeds from that to finance our donation to IRCA. So I'm not asking this to be put on the tax burden, but to look at a way a little more creative to make sure that it's not affecting our residents that way. So that's what I'm looking for, and interested to hear your thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor. Before I open it up, I just see here that you're talking about the sale of the school, Colchester school property. Can you verify what you mean by that? Yeah, you're saying the school itself and the land all the way along it, or just partial piece of that?
No, sir. What I was referring to was a part of that. Now we can't, I'm going to lose the right word, but with those properties on Bagot that we took over, we wouldn't be able to do that. And we still need property with the schoolhouse. But there are other properties up near Sullivan, and there are other properties in Colchester Center. We have some waterfront properties that we own there that aren't being used that could actually be looked at. So that's something I would like administration to have a look at, but I'm not asking to put the schoolhouse up for sale.
And none of the surrounding property, correct?
None of the surrounding property that we, I don't have the right term, that we bought out.
Yeah, the only reason I'm asking that, Councillor, is I don't want to take away from our parking, because we know how busy Colchester is getting, that's all. Okay, Councillor Guerin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I just need a little clarification, if I could, through administration perhaps. I'm a little out of touch with the Colchester Schoolhouse. How much money do we have into that building on an ongoing basis or on an annual basis? And what Councillor Bjorkman is suggesting, do we have the legal means to sell property and be able to put those dollars towards something like the John R. Park?
Doug, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I can answer the first part of the question. Right now, all we're covering is the insurance of the building. Last 2 years ago, we actually put a new roof in, and new windows and doors just to make the building secure. So other than just the basic insurance for the year, that's the only cost for putting in that building at this time.
Councillor Guerin, did you want to know what we have in that building total? Were you asking that too?
Yeah, so Doug answered the annual. I'm wondering on like long-term, how do we end up with it? What cost did we have to put out for it and such, if anything?
Go ahead, Doug.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I can send that out to council in terms of the original pricing and any renovations that have happened over the years. So I can forward that out. I'm thinking it's close to $300,000.
Thank you, Doug. Who was next? Councillor Van Nolan.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're not finished. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and the second part of that question was on maybe Mr. Morrison can answer. Do we have the legal means if we sell property that we own to be able to put those dollars towards something like John R. Park?
Through the chair, we do have a land acquisition reserve, and that's the money that's in that reserve comes from properties that we have historically sold as surplus. I don't know the specifics behind that reserve. I'd have to look it up, but generally it's for what the title says, land acquisition. So.
Good. Who was, is that good, Councillor Garrett?
Well, I don't think it answers the question. I guess with the monies we get from sale of properties, we can use it for whatever we wish to use it for.
As long as it's not a dedicated or restricted reserve, yes. Make that decision.
Okay, Councillor, good. Who is next? Lori. Lori, did you want to comment on this? Go ahead.
Just wanted to, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to make mention and just share with folks, the schoolhouse property, my understanding was expropriated. And so something that we need to keep mind of is that not only is it town-owned land, but it's also been expropriated for the use of, for public use. So that's something that we may need to dig in a little bit more through our clerk and legal advisor.
Lori, I don't think the school was expropriated. I think the land next to it was, if I'm right. Doug, go ahead.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, only the north portion of the property was expropriated, where the community garden and the schoolhouse, that was purchased.
Yeah, right.
Mr. Mayor, just briefly, clerk just wanted to let the rest of council know, Deputy Mayor Meloche was having some technical difficulties, so we do have him in right now by telephone.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. All right, Lori, were you finished, Lori? Okay, good. Councillor Van Dolen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, there's a couple of things about this proposal that I admire. For one thing, I admire I like the recognition of how much that schoolhouse is going to cost to rehab or rebuild, which is it's monstrous, and I really can't afford it either at this point or I don't know when. I also admire the fact that the creativity of the proposals and the intent that the money doesn't, the $100,000 doesn't come from current year property tax dollars. But I still got some problems with this. You know, we'd still be giving $100,000, even if we get the money from selling property, we're still donating $100,000 to an organization which is expanding its mandate into an area that we really don't need it to do. You know, we don't need IRCA to be an educational entity. Whether it's 7,000 or 18,000 students a year, 95% of them don't come from our town. And the towns they come from aren't donating to this project that we know of. So you're asking Essex property taxpayers to pick up the share of all the parents in the rest of the county who aren't donating to help build this. That's pretty unacceptable to me. So I don't know if I'm going to go along with it finally. We've got to study it for sure. I mean, I'm always in favor of studying something, but I'm a little bit worried about also about duplicating what we spend on tourism. You know, we already put quite a bit of money into it, and it just seems to me that funding this would be yet another duplication, even though I know it's in many ways necessary. But so those are problems I have with it. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor, I know we asked IRCA when they come to the meeting if they were going to the other municipalities and asking for funding towards the project, but we have never heard back from them to see see how they made out. So, no, I agree with you there. Councillor Verbeek was next.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Bjorkman, for bringing forth this motion. I'm really excited about it, and I support it. I wonder if you could give a little bit of clarity. So you're suggesting the $100,000, and we would operate the Town of Essex tourism piece within. Now, I think you've probably all seen the virtual tour, and I went so far as to go and see all the architectural drawings and such. And I believe the Zeckelmans are going to have the entire welcome center for $100,000 donation as well. And so I'm wondering, like, is this going to be like in the form of a kiosk? Are we going to have a desk that has to be, has to have a body at it? Or is it going to be just a little sitting area with, with a designated information rack? And the difference in whether or not the other municipalities, I just wanted to comment, were going to be contributing is they don't host it. This is our gem. This belongs to us. This is within Essex municipality. So that's exactly why they've come to us to assist. And I appreciate you spearheading this, Councillor Bjorkman. And could we, if need be, back that number up a little bit? I don't know. I'd be in support of the whole shebang if we could find it. Thank you.
Councillor Bowman, did you have a comment on this?
Yeah, I think we're jumping a little bit fast here. I'm intrigued by the idea. I think a couple of things we need to do is look at the other properties, and he mentioned in Colchester that are available for sale. And I know where some of them are, but I'm certainly not familiar with all of them. So I think those are issues we should be looking at as well. There's some right-of-ways and things like that. So I think we should have a discussion on it as a council, maybe at a future date as we move forward. But I think we're jumping a little bit too quick. I like the concept, but I think it needs a lot more digging and thought and study before we jump over the cliff.
Thank you, Councilor, Deputy Mayor Malash, we have you on the phone. Did you have a comment?
Yes, I missed part of the beginning because my broadband has gone out, but I think that I love the idea, and I would like to find out where we're going to get the funds. That's my big question. So if administration can help us out in trying to find the money, that's my big concern.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So where do we go from here? I think we're going to have to refer this to administration to see what. I think Councillor Bjorkman had a good idea there. We do have some properties that are available out at Colchester that we can sell. But Councillor Bondi, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Mayor, I support the motion. I think we need to investigate this. And we could say it's jumping the gun, but actually IRCA's working really fast and they're going to have their facility up and ready by December. So the federal government came up with, I don't know, I think it was $600,000, right? And if you apply some other councillor's logic, the federal government gave us $600,000, but whoever pays into the federal coffers, not everybody's going to John R. Park Homestead. Right. So if they can come up with 600,000, certainly we can do something. We are the host municipality. Also, the students that go to John R. Park Homestead, they're not getting a free ride. Their schools are paying, their parents are paying. The students are charged. It's a program. It's a moneymaker for IRCA. And as a board rep, you should know that, I think, Councillor Vanderdoel, and it's pretty important to know that. So when this comes forward, I think I'd like to ask for a recorded vote because I think this is something as the host municipality we should take some leadership on. Whether we give the whole $100,000, I don't know. But in terms of creative ways to find money, I can think of one way right now that's not going to impact our budget at all. That is completely, it's painless and easy. We have $25,000 in our budget here that I've been looking through. earmarked for council wages. We can give them a commitment of $25,000 right now, because I don't really feel that it's very timely for us to go and say we want to review our council wages. I think that we've missed that opportunity. So why would we not want to give that money to something that is educational, something that is environmental, promoting our youth and promoting our future? I do believe that the IRCA mandate should educate our youth on conservation, on historical aspects of our region, because if they don't, who will? If IRCA just said we're walking away from John R. Park Homestead, it's in our municipality, it'll fall in our lap, it'll crumble. So I do believe we need to support them in making them self-sustaining, and that's exactly what we're doing. We're behind the ball, in fact, because they've come to our council twice now and looking for money, knocking on our door. They had a groundbreaking ceremony and we went empty-handed. So we can give them $25,000 tonight with our council wages, or we can kick the can around a little bit more. But anyways, recorded vote, please, when the time comes.
Councillor, I'm not willing to give up any money tonight. What I thought we were going to give direction. Okay, what I understand, okay, I'm going to listen to the rest of council. We're talking about properties out in Colchester, and now all of a sudden we're talking about just coming up with $25,000 out of the air and giving it. I have no problem giving them money towards the project, but it's got to come from the right source. So what's the pleasure of council here tonight? Where do you want to go with this tonight? Do you want to, would you want to wait and come back from administration, see what properties are available and what they're worth? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Bjorkman.
Hey, no, I'm not prepared to wait. I think this is something that we've been waiting on. I don't think we're jumping over any cliffs. I don't think we're rushing. The schoolhouse was supposed to be it. The schoolhouse has been sitting in Langford for 5 years. They're currently at $925,000. They're trying to raise 1.2 million. That's their goal. And I believe we need a dedicated tourism center for County Road 50. We all know the growth in our town right now is County Road 50. There's tremendous opportunity and people can have a one-stop shop as they come through town to find out where the B&Bs are, where the restaurants are, where the wineries are. People can get good direction. We've been waiting too long for this now. We've got an opportunity while it's still in the early stages. Talking with them, they're not looking for us to hand them a check for $100,000 next week. If it takes us 2 years to put this money together, that's not going to be a problem. What they're looking for is support from our town. And my motion here speaks to that we will resolve to donate $100,000 to John R. Park Homestead Education Center in return for a designated tourist information center named for the town of Essex. That's what I'm asking for tonight, and I'm going to continue to ask for that. That's the motion, and that's what I want us to vote on.
So, just to clear, you're asking for $100,000, guaranteed $100,000.
Yes, sir.
Okay, over a period, are you going to take that over a period of time?
I just mentioned that they said if it took a couple of years to put that together, that would be fine. If they have our assurance and we have a resolution that we're doing that, that's something they can count on.
Okay, thank you.
You ready for a recorded?
Yep, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, a recorded vote has been requested.
Sorry, I have a question.
Go ahead.
I'm having a hard time hearing it, cutting in and out. So the motion is to move forward with the $100,000 grant to IRCA for this construction. Is there a condition that we find the money or not first?
Councillor Bjorkman, did you hear Deputy Mayor Malash? Did you hear that?
Yes, I did. And the resolution says we're going to find the $100,000.
Did you get that, Deputy Mayor?
Yes, so further, is that like we're handing over the $100,000 tomorrow?
No, Councillor Bjorkman, you're saying as long as they get it within a 2-year period or whatever, right? Is that what you're saying? Yes. No, we don't have to hand it over tomorrow, Deputy Mayor. If it takes 2 years, it takes 2 years to come up with it. And Jeff, can you add to this?
Through the chair. So in preparation for this motion, I was looking at a few options. So one of the options was the Capital Council contingency of $50,000. We've allocated a portion of that already. So there's $39,500 left within it. I believe, I don't know if Lori has anything to add under the Community Improvement Fund, if there's funding available there. And in addition, there is the Community Partnership Fund, which I believe has a balance of $20,000 left in it that could go to the Finance Committee for allocation. Those are just some options that we put together.
Lori, did you?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, we've done a little bit of number crunching in reviewing the proposal. Right now, it's in the preliminary stages with the planning division here in Development Services. The proposal right now, although we have not received a community improvement plan application, we do have, some indication that there may be some applications, or rather grants that may potentially be applied for, that being the development grant program as well as the revitalization grant program. Through that, what we've done is a number crunch, and we see that it could range between 20 to 30,000 if IRCA does apply for those community improvement plan dollars. Again, that range is, it includes not only the development permit fees, development charges as well, and potentially outdoor cafe, commercial outdoor space, conversion and rehabilitation program. So some grants that are available, we're estimating between 20 and 30.
Thank you.
Also, if I could, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Verbeek had mentioned just a few moments ago the potential to, if there is going to be a tourism information center, what does that look like in terms of staffing? So it's something that we have not looked at, we have not considered here in economic development. Nelson Silvera has, we do understand that it is going to be a hub and that it potentially could mean TWEPI may be involved. But if the ask is that the town of Essex, have some sort of operations involved, that's something that there are financial implications, of course, operationally speaking, on an annual basis that we would need to consider in this decision.
Thank you. Thank you, Lori. Councillor Bjorkman, did you have some further?
Yes, if I can just address what Lori was speaking to. In speaking with IRCA, they're not looking for us to man anything or to staff anything. Their staff will be trained by TWEPI to interact with the public on our behalf. We're looking at providing written materials, maps, flyers, that sort of thing. They're not looking for us to provide any staff for this issue.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? Okay, I'll ask for a report.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, pursuant to the recorded vote requested. So just to restate the motion, that council discuss ways to appropriate funds through, but not limited to, the sale of existing surplus properties. Whereas the town of Essex wishes to have a tourist information center in the south end of the town, preferably on County Road 50. Whereas the various businesses of the town of Essex will benefit from the added exposure. Whereas the preferred location, being the old schoolhouse in Colchester, is years and hundreds of thousands of dollars away from the use as a tourist information center. And whereas this council understands that residential and commercial development in the south end of the town is accelerating, that therefore the council of the town of Essex resolved to donate $100,000 to the John R. Park Homestead Education Center in return for a designated tourist information center named for the town of Essex. This motion's been moved by Councillor Bjorkman, seconded by Councillor Verbeek, and Councillor Bondi has requested a recorded vote. On the motion, Councillor Bondi, how do you vote?
Councillor Guerin has his hand up. So I want to address that before we vote, please. I don't know if it's too.
Councillor Garrett? Councillor
Yeah,
Garrett?
if I could, sorry, I was trying to put it up, but it wasn't getting your attention. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I know it's $100,000 we're talking about, and it doesn't matter if it's today, tomorrow, or a couple years up the road. It's still gonna be $100,000. I need clarification on where the money's coming from exactly, because I'm reading the first part of the motion that the council of the town of Essex discuss ways to appropriate funds through, but not limited to the sale of existing properties. I need to know what "but not limited" means. Does that mean that the monies can come from outside of sales of property?
A response was limit through those sales, but not limited to those particular sales. No, it's limited to sales of property so that it's not attached to a tax increase or the tax bill.
Right. Thank you, Councillor. Did you get that, Councillor Garrett? Okay, good. Okay, good. Any other questions before we? Okay, go ahead.
So Councillor Bondi, how do you vote on the motion?
Support.
Councillor Vanderdolen?
Opposed.
Councillor Bowman?
Support.
Mayor Snively?
Support.
Deputy Mayor Malash?
Support.
Support. Councillor Guerin?
Councillor Garrett?
Support.
Support. Councillor Verbeek?
Support.
And Councillor Bjorkman?
Support.
With a vote of 7 in support and 1 opposed, the motion carries. Item 17 this evening is bylaws. Bylaws for third and final reading. 1898 to confirm the proceedings from the March 16th, 2020 regular council meeting.
Mover, please. Need a mover, Councillor Bowman and Councillor Bjorkman. All in favor? Carried.
17.2.1, bylaw 1905, being a bylaw to appoint a drainage superintendent for the corporation of the town of Essex. And for council's information, this is just a corrective bylaw as we needed to repeal all previous appointments of the drainage superintendent. So we're asking for 3 readings to 1905, which repeals the prior appointing bylaws.
Mover, please. Councillor Bjorkman and Councillor Vanendel. All in favor? Carried.
And for 2 readings this evening, bylaw 1906 to confirm the proceedings of this April 6, 2020 regular council meeting.
Mover, please. Councillor Verbeek and Councillor Bowman. All in favor? Carried. And before we go into adjournment, it's tough, you guys. We're still trying to learn our way through this. This is a tough one. Like, we had a few glitches tonight, but I'm sure it's going to get better all the way along. But thanks for your patience, and thanks to administration. You guys are doing a hell of a job taking us through this crisis that we're going through. We're going through some tough times, and I think it's going to last for a while. So hats off to administration for everything they're doing. Councillor Verbeek, you had something to say before we?
I do, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I think we missed over council's remarks, and I wanted to draw attention to an event we're putting together with to support our people in our long-term care and our seniors residents in Essex, to show that the town of Essex, the council, and our staff, we know that they're there. We appreciate the 150 staff that are helping these seniors at this very scary time. And so we're creating a drive-by for next April, the Tuesday after Easter, April the 14th at 11 o'clock. We're going to gather at the Essex Arena, and we're going to have some town vehicles and maybe a fire truck, and anybody from town, stay in your cars, don't get out, social distancing. But if you want to take a drive by and let the residents at the seniors home know that we love and support them, and that we're all in this together. That'll be next Tuesday.
Great, thank you. Councillor Bondi, did you have anything? Councillor Guerin, did you have anything? Councillor Bowman? Councillor Bjorkman? Councillor Vanden, nothing?
Yes, I do have something to say.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
First of all, I wanted to thank the 15 people, the diehards who are still watching us on YouTube. I think there were about 30 when we started. I've been watching it over here on my home PC. I want to thank staff for putting this together. I think this has worked really well, despite a few glitches. But I wanted to say that my wife Veronique and I have been remarking over the past couple of weeks how lucky we are to be shut in a place like Essex. I mean, we're lucky to be here. I mean, a lot of people are cooped up in much less favorable circumstances than we are. But somebody gave me an idea today. An old friend of mine, a guy in his 70s who lives alone, and we have lunch once a month. Of course, we missed it this month. When he called me today, he said, "Yeah, I've started this thing. I go through my contact list every day. I phone a relative or somebody I know, an old friend, just to stay connected." I thought, what a great idea. So that's how he's coping. And if there's anyone out there who's cooped up and living alone and is getting lonely, I thought that was a great idea. I should pass along. Just phone somebody, get out your contact list. Can help you get through this. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Malash, did you have anything?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to elaborate on Councillor Vanderdoorn's message. I think this coming Friday would be a good day to reach out to someone. In particular, we should all be calling the mayor, Larry Snively, and wishing him a happy birthday.
Oh. Hey, I'm getting older, Deputy Mayor.
That's a good thing.
Yeah,
the alternative.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. I have one thing. Kim, I'm so glad you put that together. Okay, for the seniors, and I'm going to do my little pitch there too, with a couple of business people. We got 180 baskets are going to be done. So hopefully I can help you out, and maybe you can help me deliver them, and whoever wants to help. So, but anyways, there's going to be 180 baskets, and we'll show them we really appreciate their service. So thank you. And at this point, I'm going to ask for adjournment. So I need a mover to adjourn. Councillor Bowman and Councillor Vanden. All in favor, and it's carried. And thanks, Chris, for being patient. Nepsy, and the rest of the staff, you guys have been here a long time tonight, so it's been a little later meeting.